of policymakers and experts, dear participants. I'm very pleased that I can welcome you on behalf of Austria to the products track of the virtual series that will lead us to the Vienna Energy Forum on 6 and 7 July 2021. The Austrian Development Corporation and the Austrian Federal Ministry are among the co-founders of the Vienna Energy Forum and is key sponsor. This forum is a global multi-stakeholder platform that has been driving and providing inputs into the sustainable energy debate over the past decade. Today we are kicking off the products track of the virtual series, and it will focus on energy efficiency and building related products and appliances. Now, given the unprecedented COVID situation, the Vienna Energy Forum has embarked on this virtual process of preparing for the conference next year. Despite COVID, we need to remain in contact, we need to maintain the dialogue, we have to link the expert opinions and provide action-oriented recommendations in the global context of climate, energy, and sustainable development. Now, the year 2020 marks 5 years since the adoption of the 2030 Development Agenda, and thus the final decade of action is ahead of us. The implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and of the Paris Climate Agreement remain a truly global challenge. Unfortunately, some of the previous progress has been limited due to the COVID crisis. Now, dear participants, ensuring access to sustainable, clean, reliable, and affordable energy for all, as well as successfully minimizing the effects of climate change and eradicating poverty, are closely intertwined. We need to address this from a multi-sectoral perspective. This involves creating jobs, supporting inclusive and innovative businesses, improving policy and regulatory frameworks, and developing affordable and energy efficient products and appliances. Its success hinges upon the engagement and commitment of all actors: governments, the private sector, civil society, and the academia. It also depends on the creation of the right enabling environments for businesses. And with this in mind, the Austrian Development Corporation is committed to supporting the improvement of energy efficiency standards, rules, and regulations. Examples are the work on regional energy efficiency standards, as well as on labeling implementation at national level. These fields of action have been key concerns in the context of our support of the regional centers for renewable energy and energy efficiency. And when we look at energy efficiency in building related products, we see that it enhances economic competitiveness, creates jobs, and saves consumers money. In particular, low-income consumers can substantially benefit from energy efficiency. This helps them reduce their energy bills. It lowers their vulnerability to price changes and also decreases their investment needs for energy technologies. This in turn frees resources to satisfy some of other needs. Well, dear participants, I'm sure you have plenty of things to say for yourself, so I will stop here. And I wish you a very successful and productive first session of the products track of the virtual series. And I hope that I will see you again at the latest at the Vienna Energy Forum in 2021. Thank you for your attention.
And certainly it's great to partner in this innovative format as we run up to the Vienna Energy Forum next year. And thanks very much, Ronald, for your opening words and certainly for Austria's continued leadership on this topic, as well as Austria's support for SEforALL, for which we are very much appreciative. We enjoy being good Vienna energy citizens in that respect. Energy efficient products are near the heart of the challenge, as described by Ronald, because they offer a step into an economy-wide approach to low carbon development. And if we keep this approach in mind, it needs to be useful for everyone, for low-income consumers as well, everyone who is part of the economy. As we know, today, there are an estimated 789 million people who still lack access to electricity, over 1 billion people at high risk due to lack of access to cooling, and about 2.8 to 4 billion people that lack access to modern clean cooking. Accelerating action to close these access gaps will help our attempt globally to recover better from the current pandemic and the current economic crisis. But we also need to use this moment to contribute to progress on climate action. In this sense, energy efficiency in products is an extremely important mechanism, both to close the access gaps and to deliver on low carbon development and cheaper energy services for everyone. When designing policies and regulations for both passive and active energy efficiency products, affordability is an important factor that needs to be considered. How do we get there? Higher energy efficiency commitments are needed to achieve the ambitions of both SDG 7, as well as the ambitions of the Paris Agreement. And while countries are identifying energy efficiency as important interventions, they need to be more ambitious in terms of taking advantage of stimulus packages that are currently being designed, because it will also improve their eventual economy's competitiveness and their ability to accelerate recovery while creating sustainable jobs. It won't be possible to achieve SDG 7 or the Paris Agreement without a clean energy transition that leaves no one behind. In this regard, SEforALL believes that energy efficiency is integral to this. We need to mobilize more financing for energy efficiency through international cooperation, multi-stakeholder partnership for developing countries, and here we look to our partners such as Austria for their leadership in this continued effort. A promising mechanism that will help bring the global community closer to the needs of developing countries can be found in the Energy Transition Council that was recently announced by the UK COP26 presidency, and at which SEforALL and SEforALL's CEO will be the co-chair. This council brings together the coalition of global actors needed to provide the necessary support to countries as they make ambitious commitments to transition their energy mix and make adjustments to their economies. In closing, Ana Lucia, I would like to thank the Vienna Energy Forum for opening this important space to discuss how we can help make some promising collaborations that can move forward energy efficient products and low carbon economy solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ronald. Now we're going to move with UNIDO's representative, Ms. Petra. I'm adding her and she has the floor. Thank you so much to both of you.
Hello, everybody. You see it's a bit sunshining here in Vienna. Thank you so much for your introduction, for the opening remarks, Roland and Glenn. Roland from the Austrian Development Agency and Glenn from Sustainable Energy for All. We very much value the cooperation with all of you on convening the product track discussions. Thank you all for joining the first session of the Vienna Forum Virtual Series Products Track. The Vienna Energy Forum Virtual Series is a new platform that we are launching this year under the umbrella of the VEF. The series, which will look at issues related to driving demand for green products with a focus on products used in buildings, as you could hear already in the introduction. The objectives of the series is to collect the needs and critical issues, preventing progress on the ground, and to identify key areas and eventually solutions that can help advancing action on the ground and in high impact countries. For this reason, we have prepared the discussion paper that was circulated to all of you and is also available on the VEF website, and it describes the main issues and topics of the discussion. The paper also includes a methodology and criteria for the selection and identification of key countries where progress needs to happen. The discussions of the Virtual Series will also help shape up a global program that supports high priority actions on the ground, which will then be launched at the main session of the Vienna Energy Forum, which will take place on 5th and 6th July 2021. The discussions will also feed into a series of policy briefs that will be disseminated at key global events next year. So we have reached out to leading public and private institutions working in this field and also country representatives. Some of them are gathered with us today. So it would be ideally to have the partners and experts joining the discussions and to attend the majority of sessions per track. That would ensure that we build alignment and buy-in of the outputs, although the speakers will alternate to offer a diversity of opinions. I will just take some time to describe the process and what we will do today. We will start with a scene setting presentation, which will be delivered by Martin Brown from HEAT Consulting, who has worked with us on developing the discussion paper and framing the issues. After this, we will move into 4 breakout sessions, which offer different perspectives on our topics today. The Ceremonial Saal convenes a discussion under the heading Global Perspectives and will feature speakers from the Green Climate Fund, TARPRED, the European Commission, the Austrian Energy Agency, the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, and the Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development. The second Metternich Saal convenes a discussion under the theme Country Voices, and we welcome speakers from Kenya, India, Ghana, Chile, Colombia, the Swedish Energy Agency, and the Energy Saving Trust. In the Retutensaal, we will have a discussion on the theme Enabling for Progress, and we welcome speakers from the African Development Bank, the Global Environment Facility, EconLair, International Copper Alliance, ENGIE, and the East Africa Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. The Rittersaal will talk, in the Rittersaal, we will talk about issues related to evidence and data. And there we will have speakers from the World Resources Institute, GIZ, CLASPS, ECOWAS Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, SEforALL, and VAS. All our speakers, after the scene setting presentation, please click on the outbreak room where you were assigned to. The audience, so all of whom is listening to us now, can choose which room to go to depending on the interest. And we will also ask you to contribute your thoughts via the chat. Following the discussions in the outbreak room, the breakout rooms, we will come back to the plenary in the main session, and we will hear the moderators of each group here. So I hope that this has set the scene for all of you, and I pass on to Martin to provide us the presentation. Thank you very much, and I wish you very exciting and interesting discussions.
Thank you, Petra. Thank you so much. There has been a little change in the plans. So we have Mr. Dietram Opert. He's going to be presenting on heat. So welcome, Mr. Dietram. We're excited to have you.
Yes, thanks, Anna. And I'm very pleased and good afternoon and good morning to everyone here. Just as a note, in order to see the presentation, maybe you have to click on the window of the presentation to see it in the full screen mode on your PC. Otherwise, you just see it as a small icon. So please press on the presentation to see the full presentation. So I like to start first with the next slide on the definition, basically how we understand here for this virtual series energy in buildings and energy efficiency in buildings and the opportunities. So we really take a broad approach to buildings. So it's energy used in buildings and the energy efficiency which comes with it. So that includes basically the design of the buildings to limit the heat and the cooling load required by the buildings. And this includes elements such as window to wall ratio, the orientation of the buildings, passive house structures. This includes the insulation, basically to allow less heat or cold coming in. So that means insulation, louvrettes, and reflectors. The building materials as such, building materials account something between 20 up to 20 or 25% of the total carbon footprint of a building. So building materials like auto-conclaved aerated concretes are important, not only for insulation, but also for lowering the carbon footprint of the buildings. And then very importantly, the appliances as key energy consumers in the buildings. And here, first of all, it's air conditioners, refrigerators, heating systems, like in future heat pumps. And then not to forget about the services. Services absolutely key in maintaining energy efficiency, that the heating and cooling systems in buildings are properly maintained. Please, next slide. So buildings are really essential when it comes to delivering on the Paris targets. As it was just outlined in the latest World Energy Outlook, VEO 2020, we have to, the potential to lower greenhouse gas emissions in the building sector is by 1/3. So basically by 2030, we can lower the greenhouse gas emissions by 1/3 from 9 gigatons to 6 gigatons. And as you can see here in the graph, more than 50% of this potential can come or will come from energy efficiency. So really driving energy efficiency in buildings is key. And buildings overall contribute to 25% of the energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. So in order to meet the target of net zero, which now some 120 countries are working on, basically this buildings are absolutely key. Next one. Yeah, this slide basically shows that the energy saving potential or the energy efficiency potential and the greenhouse gas potential equally are both can be realized in advanced economies and developing economies in a similar scale. And then here buildings are one of the biggest drivers on energy savings. In addition to that, actually also energy efficiency investments in buildings really pay off. So they have a short payback and there can be lots of savings. So this is also sustainable to many economies and also individual users or owners of buildings. And last but not least, I think it's also key contribution when it comes to COVID and the recovery plans. We see that, for example, in Europe, where the renovation wave, how it's called in Europe, plays a key role in basically in the recovery, in driving energy efficiency, and in delivering on the net zero plan for Europe. Next slide. So what are the opportunities and how can we realize them? I think, first of all, what is absolutely key is a solid policy framework, which provides clear signals to the market players, to innovators, and also to consumers. Next are regulatory tools, which basically provide the uptake and the platform for highly energy efficient options and brand worst performers. Then we need to increase the awareness. So individual behavior plays an important role to adopt the framework and also have informed choices. Next is financing. So financing is absolutely key in bridging the barriers of upfront and running costs and for adopting energy efficient solutions. And last but not least, it's also basically all these tools are important for meeting the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, in order to achieve access to energy, employment for youth, and gender. Next one. So more specifically, there are lots of policies and information campaigns and technology innovations and financing and incentive processes underway, which are increasingly adopted by more and more countries. And we can here depict from best practices. And what it really would be important is that we achieve universal minimum energy efficiency standards and carbon performance standards for key appliances and systems. This includes basically, in order to reach the net zero target by 2050, adopting MAPs by 2030 universally at the level of best-in-class appliances which we have today. And then also have buildings code, like for example, that was adopted in China, which allows only maximum energy use per square meter or carbon use per square meter. Then we need to have better information. Basically, we need to make use of digital tools to increase the demand-side responses and have more flexibility for sector coupling and grid connection. On technology, it's important to depict product design standards, which also include low GWP and environmental friendly refrigerants and elements of the circular economy, that we use materials which are reusable and recyclable and have low carbon at the same time. On financing and incentives, governments can really play a key leading role in setting the trend with green public procurement programs. Below market rate interest rates are important to lower the upfront costs and make investments in energy efficiency attractive and feasible. And then we need incentives to bring innovation and reach the scale of energy efficient green building products. Next one. So basically, what we would like to achieve here also with the virtual forum is to have a group of countries which are leading and front running the drive to more energy efficient buildings and products in buildings. And for this, basically, we have adopted a methodology for the selection of countries where we have first assessed the countries, make a list of countries, and then we have grouped the countries according to the level of development and divided them into 3 groups. And then did a ranking of greenhouse gas emission mitigation potential in the building sector and products related to it according to the different countries. And then we have assessed the readiness for implementation. This leads us to the next slide. So basically, by having this methodology applied, we identify countries which have a requirement for assistance, where there are basically needs for support and where the ambition can be raised. Next is an impact. Basically, it's country where energy efficiency in buildings have a big impact to lower greenhouse gas emissions. And the last one is basically the readiness and the willingness to cooperate and use collaborative action to improve energy efficiency, lower energy consumption, and lower greenhouse gas emissions. Next one. Yeah, and with this, basically, we have set up, so today is really the kickoff to a whole series of sessions, which will be conducted during the course of 2020 and 21, where we have basically 8 sessions and looking into different areas. And these areas are basically, it starts with today's sessions, and then it goes into the affordability of energy efficient products. It goes in capacity building and how building energy efficiency in products and buildings can support other targets under the SDGs like equity, youth, and gender. Then specifically looking into best practices on energy efficiency policies and regulations, and on how we can support economic recovery and innovation and digitalization. And then the financial aspects of it, and basically building the momentum. So very happy to go with you for all these different sessions. And then I think next now we go into the breakup sessions. And then I would go over to my colleagues basically, and I think you have to go now in the different breakup sessions.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for joining this breakout group about the global perspectives on how to achieve the market transformation towards energy efficient products and equipment. So we have basically 45 minutes now to discuss in this group. We have 3 guiding questions. Hi, Gary. Oh, I can see a bit of change.
Hi, Gary.
Hello, welcome.
It's my Santa look.
It's the Santa look, okay. Yeah, it's the first time we see Gary with a beard, so. So thank you very much for joining. I guess it's very early at your place.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
That's good.
Good. So we do have now about 40 minutes left to discuss basically 3 key questions that will guide this discussion. And maybe once you speak, you could also introduce yourself a little bit more, but just at the beginning to not to lose time, we have Gary Jackson, who is the Executive Director of the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. We have Monica Goldberg from the Green Climate Fund. We have Leonardo Barreto Gomez from the Austrian Energy Agency. We have Arno Kaschel from the European Commission, DG Climate, and we have Gabriel Dreyfus from the Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development. So I would say we start immediately with looking at the first question. Considering that we are basically discussing here about the global perspectives. And our first question is going directly into that. And the question is, are we on track for achieving the energy efficiency targets of SDG 7 in the various regions or globally? If we recall, the energy efficiency target by 2030 is to double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. And if we look at the 2020 SDG report with regards to the improvement on energy efficiency, it's actually a bit of a sad story. If we look at that particular chapter, while in 2015 we achieved so far a peak of an improvement of 3%, ever since then we have a strong decline, reaching the 1.7 decrease, etc. So this is what the numbers are telling us according to the report, but I would be very pleased to hear from you how you would see where we are. And maybe we start with the islands to give us a first glance of, Gary, looking at your region, are you concerned or do you think we are on track?
Concerned. I don't think we're on track. It's always difficult to take what we call intangible and make it feel tangible. Energy efficiency has always been a struggle within the regional context, to have something that is grounded that people can actually feel. And I think we need to develop some tools and benchmarking activities that will give countries some more visual aid and some more visibility in how this is going to impact their respective sectors. So right now, we have not been doing a great job on energy efficiency, but there are mechanisms that we have started to put in place. We have established the minimum energy performance standards. We have recently have a Caribbean Energy Efficiency Building Code that was completed in 2018, but now all of these things are done. We need to kind of have the rubber hit the road and have the conversion starting to happen.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure, should I do the tour, or should we just, you give a sign or just take the floor? We do the tour. Then maybe Gabrielle, could you be the next one, please? And share your thoughts.
Thanks. Yeah, so picking up on what Gary was saying, energy efficiency is challenging. It's hard to point to, but it does keep the lights on in the sense that my family is from California, and recently we had a giant heat storm, which 45% of the peak load was due to everyone being home and running their air conditioners, and actually did exceed the capacity of the system for various reasons to maintain operation briefly. So there are rolling blackouts. And one of the things that has not been discussed, I think, as much as it should, is how much of that peak could be shaved through existing technologies and demand response type things. And so I think it's really important that we continue to see energy efficiency as an enabler, especially as we look to integrate more renewables on the grid, as we electrify buildings. It's going to be extremely important to make sure that we are delivering energy services as efficiently as possible so that people are able to live and maintain health and productivity and comfort. And so the perspective that I'm really focusing on to your question on meeting SDG 7 is from the cooling perspective, because we know that demand for cooling is only projected to grow, and currently it's outpacing our decarbonization of the building sector. And so improving efficiency both in the building envelope, but also in the equipment that we use to deliver cooling is extremely important.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Maybe from California, we moved to India. There was the cooling part was already mentioned and highlighted as very important. Sudhir, representative of the cooling sector, please.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for that, Gabrielle. That was the right setting for what I was actually about to say as well. I mean, as a we are from the private sector, right? We essentially are a cooling services company. And just to bridge that gap between what technology is out there and what can be done, we basically do a lot of business model innovation by investing, designing, owning, and operating large-scale cooling systems, predominantly in the GCC. We are just looking at India as a new market now, and I'm leading the efforts into India. And I think, we all know of the substantial growth in cooling demand expected in India. So it's extremely important that, whilst there is an awareness problem and also the adaptation problem in countries like India, bringing that on the ground through someone taking out that risk of basically adopting having the knowledge to know what kind of technologies could be implemented, taking the risk to execute them, finance them in the right way, with or without public sector support, and ensuring that it can be done, is where a big part of the problem is in countries like India, right? And in most emerging markets, I would think, right? So yeah, it's like, from a cooling standpoint, at least what's interesting to see, at least in India, is I'm sure most of you must be aware of the India Cooling Action Plan. That was a plan that was announced last year. Quite ambitious. It touches upon 5 or 6 key thematic areas and sets concrete targets in terms of what should be done to meet cooling demand going forward in a more sustainable manner. It doesn't have any regulatory teeth to it because it's just a plan driven by one ministry. but at the same time, it's a good start in terms of the scope and the breadth of what the country is trying to do, right? So it's important, I agree. So it's like, I mean, it's still very, very early. We need to see how things pan out, but yeah.
Thank you very much, Sudhir. Arno, moving to the European Union, how do we see whether we are on track?
Okay, thank you. Yes, European Commission in this case. I'm very happy to hear that there's other people interested in cooling on this call, because that's a bit also the angle I have to this very, very broad subject. So that's great. We'll have some commonalities to talk about. I think I would also join others that there seems a lot more work to do on this objective. But on the other hand, I think there's also some opportunities, just because there's a lot of work to do and lots of potential still to do. The Commission has recently, in the recent days, made a report on that. Actually, we may be close to missing our 2020 targets in the EU on energy consumption overall, and maybe COVID will help us a little bit in this year, because that's the data for 2018. But if we want to move forward, looking to 2030, and you know that Europe wants to move to a climate neutrality 2050, and have 50%, 55% or more, possibly, that's now the Commission proposal, by 2030 already, we will have to do more. And I think there an important puzzle piece is, of course, the energy efficiency. And I think the pandemic at the moment is an opportunity in a way that there is a lot of public money being made available. At least in Europe, we have, you may have heard of the Next Generation EU, which is a program of 750 billion. And some of that will certainly go in this direction. There's one lighthouse project called Renovate, which is towards improving the energy efficiency of public and private buildings. So I think there is, through this, maybe immediately, some opportunity to do something in this area. And, you know, I think, well, in other countries, you have similar programs where this can also happen. And I think that's something maybe we should be looking at this moment in time for the immediate future, to improve on the performance that we have so far. So at least in our policy, as I mentioned, it's a lighthouse project, and this energy efficiency first principle that we included in our policies, and look at, you know, this, sometimes also other speakers said it might be something that's easily overlooked, you know, an easy quick win, that we always take that into account when we design the new policies and try to reap the benefits in this way.
Thank you so much, Arno. Monica, the GCF has the mandate to finance all of these projects, basically, that could contribute to a significant improvement. What's your perspective on this?
Thank you, Karin, and thank you for inviting me. Maybe to just introduce myself a little bit, I'm at GCF now. I've been working otherwise also in Europe. I'm Swedish, and I've been working on energy efficiency in Sweden as well. And the perspective of GCF, of course, is the non-Annex 1 countries, and also the leverage of capital and crowding in of private sector. And so that's our perspective. And whether we are on track or not, I would say not. And it's particularly relevant to look at, for example, Africa, among the non-Annex 1 countries. And let me have a few reflections on the trends here, because one thing that really affects the trends on energy efficiency is we measure it in energy intensity. So the denominator is the economy, and while we usually say that the COVID crisis supports transition, in this particular case, because of the GDP drop, we have a little bit of a problem of measuring the trend in that sense over this specific period. Another thing that I would like to reflect on a little bit, because we're talking about buildings and appliances, and Karin, you know, also I'm pushing for appliances, and it's such a big part of the demand that it needs to be looked into. On the other hand, I must say there is also a risk, and I'm bringing this risk into the discussion here today, because when you focus on an appliance from a policy point of view and financing point of view, you sort of inflate also the opportunities of focusing on a part of the solution. So we're now talking very much about cooling. We've been talking a lot about lighting, and motors is another such appliance or electricity and using appliance where we know there's a lot of use and potential of getting more efficient motors. But it's also very important to look at actual overall energy need and the overall sort of whole building perspective or whole industry perspective. Otherwise, we might sort of rush pushing for a product that maybe wasn't needed in the first place, but because of all the funding and all the focus we put on that product, we are creating sort of a market. And I think this is very important because, for example, in the building sector, and if you look at Europe, it's a balance between focusing, for example, on windows or lighting products, etc., and putting the expectations on single solutions. But you will also have to have measures like life cycle cost calculations or cap or incentives for not even connecting to the grid, having passive houses or net energy producing houses. And when it comes to cooling, for example, if you don't need the electric cooling, of course, that's a win for everyone. If you can have absorption cooling or if you can have natural cooling, that should come first. Lastly, let me just talk a little bit about Africa also. I think what we need to do for Africa, we need to be much more interested in the emerging demand. Because it's like we're looking where we have the lamp. We know so much about the products that we've seen around 20 years in our own economies, and we have an understanding how to enhance them and so forth. But we have a lot of people, 600 million people in Africa and almost 800 million globally, who don't yet have electricity and all, and they have large economic developments ahead, and they will invest in a lot of interesting things, agriculture, industry, health, and the kind of products that they will induce to the global energy demand, so to say, might be things that we didn't even think of yet. So we'll have to have an ear to that market to understand what the kind of products are that are needed, in addition to the lighting and the cooling and the things that we know already. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica. This is quite insightful. I think Leonardo from the Austrian Energy Agency, you have been working with so many regions now around the world. What's your observation on whether we are on track?
Thank you, Karin. Yes, we work at the Austrian level on energy efficiency. We are the monitoring body for energy efficiency. Also have work in Eastern Europe, and we're currently working on energy efficiency cities in Eastern Europe, and we have worked in the past in West Africa and also the Caribbean together with Gary on these issues. I share the concerns of the other participants. I think energy efficiency is extremely important, but we have to do much more about it to be on track and to tap the potential. I think there are a number of issues. I mean, even countries that have worked on energy efficiency for a very long time, like Austria or other European countries, are facing challenges. I mean, at the European level, as Arno mentioned, there is this principle of energy efficiency first, to put energy efficiency in all planning and decision making. But it still remains to be operationalized. I mean, it still remains to be put in place in the regulations, in the directives, in the decisions of the member states, and also the decisions of the companies. The other issue is the impact of energy efficiency on the energy systems integration at the European level. This has been recently also issued an energy system integration strategy. Energy efficiency is a central piece of the strategy for energy system integration to make the energy system more circular, to make it more efficient, but it still has to be operationalized. On the regulatory side, we have the Renewable Energy Directive, the Energy Efficiency Directive, and the Energy Performance Directive. And it's very important to make a coordinated implementation of these three directives to be able to realize the potential of energy efficiency and help use efficiency to help us to integrate the renewable energy. That's on the European side. I mean, I think even the implementation of the other directives, like the Eco Design Directive, are facing challenges. Sometimes the regulatory process is very long. Sometimes this going back and forth between the Commission and member states makes that the legislation for a large package of products have to be enacted, and then when the regulation comes out, it's already outdated to some extent. We also face challenges on market surveillance. I mean, there's still non-compliance by product manufacturers and retailers, and we are talking about a region that has been working on this for several decades. On the global level, I think there, and particularly looking at Africa, for instance, we have to look at connections between energy efficiency and other areas. The first connection is energy efficiency and access. We have to use energy efficiency for access. We have to make access strategies more integrated with energy efficiency. We can make the best out of the renewable energy that is being installed. You have a PV panel and you are using super efficient appliances, then you can make the most of the PV panel, or you can install a smaller PV panel in a household, and then you can use efficiency to move forward your off-grid access strategies. On the other hand, there is a connection also to energy poverty. At the moment, with the COVID crisis, it's very important that energy safety nets by the governments cover consumers, but in the long term, efficiency could help consumers to be protected from price increases, or could help governments to make the most out of the budgets that they are using now to cover the consumers. If you combine energy poverty measures, fuel poverty, as it's called in Eastern Europe, and energy efficiency measures, you can reduce the budgets that you have to use as subsidies for vulnerable consumers. That's one point. The other points are, I think there has to be a connection between energy efficiency and trade strategies. That you will have to look for regional approaches and trade that help energy efficiency appliance move forward, like tax exemptions or others. I mean, between a region, ECOWAS, for example. And also, I think there is another point, which is health. I think in the health sector, with the COVID crisis, we need medical appliances that are energy efficient, that can work off-grid, that can work with weak grids. We are going to have to talk about DC appliances as well in this area. And I think energy efficiency can be a part of our strategy to move forward the electrification of health centers in regions that don't have it, and something that has become very urgent in the past months. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that was a quite interesting first round. My suggestion with the next two questions is that we kind of merge them, because they are very interlinked when it comes to what are the barriers of progress, what are the opportunities. I think we have barriers that are very common. We've talked about them a lot, about the absence of policies and regulatory frameworks and so on. So they are somehow valid throughout. But I wanted to see what's your view also when we really look at markets, on achieving this market transformation towards efficient products. Where do you see the opportunities, other than already identifying the given obstacles of, yes, we have to work more on conducive policies and we have to strengthen the capacity. But where do you see that the markets needs to be stimulated? What about business models that we need to promote? Gabriel, please.
Two really important observations and tools are recently raising awareness in my mind. The first is that, especially when we're talking about countries like those in Africa that are primarily technology takers, one of the things that we're seeing, and Kofi, I'm sure, is talking about this in the other session, is that they receive both new and used appliances, and unless they have, and even if they do have in place policies, it's very difficult to enforce. And so there's a report that came out recently by CLASS that looked at environmentally harmful dumping, particularly for air conditioning appliances in Africa. And one of the key observations is that about a quarter of those appliances are imported, and of the inefficient appliances, these are new. These are new appliances that would not be sold in their countries of origin. They're less efficient than, for example, the countries of origin. But also there's a lot assembled in Africa. So the first thing is countries that are exporting need to take some responsibility for what they're exporting, both new and used, to these countries, so that the burden is not all shifted to countries that already have a lot of challenges. Second is that there are tools that actually are, especially for technology taking countries, there's the UNIDO for Efficiency recently developed a set of model regulations that actually establish tiers, minimum, middle, and high performance for a set of different products and appliances that allow regions to essentially to harmonize to increase essentially the market demand for the higher performing products. So I would say one of the barriers is essentially if the market is saturated with low efficiency, obsolete products, it makes it very hard for more efficient products to compete. And this is what we're seeing with the dumping, the environmental dumping, but that there are tools, including policy tools, like the model regulations that are now available. And should I include links in the chat? Is that okay?
Yes, for sure, please. Who would like to take the floor next? I think Gary.
Thanks, Karen.
How do we achieve market transformation? That's the big question in the Caribbean.
Right. So we market transformation. I want to start with the people. All right. Now, there's a human capacity issue that we have to consider. Persons are in this room now. And who are listening to us are normally persons who have already converted to understanding how important energy efficiency is, right? Now, when you look at the people on the ground who are actually interfacing with all these appliances and all these technologies, they are not so much aware. And I think a lot of times we have not been able to engage them in a way that they will be able to make the necessary decisions that will transform their lives. And I think we have to find a mechanism of how we are actually get them to understand the value that energy efficiency have. And with all the sustainable development goals, how are they playing their part in actually making these transformative actions take place? There is, when you look at the technology, Gabriel mentioned about, what is happening when you're having these levels of exports or imports. I can tell you for the Caribbean, and I know we're not talking about transportation, but if you look at transportation for a little bit, 30% of our fuel consumption is coming from transportation, right? Now, these are countries that are net importers, that are using foreign exchange to buy this fuel while they have social errors or social deficits that they have to focus on, like public health and all of that. Now, a lot of the transportation that come into the countries are very cheap transportation that is very inefficient motor vehicles, but we are importing them because they are cheaper. I mean, electric vehicles are not something that we'll import that easily. While it's more efficient, it's more costly. So accessibility to these type of technologies is an issue for Caribbean member states, for small markets, because we are small markets. We are not like an Africa that has 1 billion people. We are, I mean, if you look at the Caribbean, including Cuba, all the islands, including the USVIs, all the OTCs, you're looking at 45 million people. So the market is really very tiny, but these are independent countries operating, managing their social and environmental development, and they are not able to access technology that would advance energy efficiency in their markets. So the availability of these technologies is a question. The adoption of these technologies based on our human capacity and the adaptation of these technologies within the framework of our countries is going to be a challenge. And it's something that we need to figure out how we are going to be working with our member states in challenging these, attacking these challenges. But one of the things I can say to you is that within these markets, one of the things that we want to create is what we call an integrated utility service model. Because what we find in the energy efficiency market is that we don't seem to be able to move that wheel that encourages the market to evolve. So the players that are in the market are not clearly defined. We once went for the ESCOs, where we had this energy service companies, but the market was so small that it didn't take off. You just have spot activities taking place, persons doing energy audits here and there, but it's not taking off. So what we have decided to do through a pilot is have the utilities who have already been connected to the system by delivering a service that is required by the consumer to say, what if you start doing work behind the meter? And we create an environment and a regulatory framework that would be able to connect to the population without since its market is so small already, that you're already delivering a particular service. And we create a regulatory framework whereby we can see some transparency on how each actor is actually performing their activities in this market. So it's actually creating this new market. Now we are piloting this in about 4 member states. And the hope is that the regulatory environment will receive this, which they have started to receive it. They are making some changes in these 4 countries now. There will be some tariff reviews in terms of how the services will be supplied to these end users. And then on the demand side, we are trying to attract a lot of the industries and tourist sector to be a player and participate, because there are going to be requirements in human behavior changes, there are going to be requirements in technology changes. We mentioned cooling, a big part of it. So we're talking about not having stranded assets. How do you do the switch when last year I did a conversion in my cooling system? How do I do the switch today? What would be the mechanism for me to do that right now? So we are trying to put that together with a view of not only doing a regulatory reform, but also enabling the reform and also enforcing it, because sometimes we have write legislation or we have put regulations in place and it's not enforced. It's in a paper, it's passed through a parliament, but the population doesn't know, and the population doesn't know how to act in relation to this regulation or this legislative changes. So the information that we have, we need to find a mechanism to get it out there, and it has to be a very clear and very consistent information. So it has to be through different things. It can be through social media. It can just be through data analysis, so people can understand what is the value that this particular intervention is going to play in my life. So we have to find that way to get that information. I think information is a critical component in that transformative action that we are looking for. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Gary. Sudhir, as a private company, I was wondering if you could give us a bit of a recipe that we could roll out probably in other regions. How can we make this business case stronger for companies to embark on this journey of energy efficiency, to really see the business case behind energy efficiency?
Sure. And thanks for the great question. And just picking on that and looking at our journey itself for a market like India, right? I mean, like I said, we as a company, we've predominantly been in the GCC, and we looked at India as a new market just last year. It's not been, it's been a year and a half or 2 years now. It's fairly new, right? So what we observed again from the energy efficiency standpoint and adopting more sustainable solution standpoint was, I mean, the market conundrum is that it's a large country, of course, 1 billion plus people, and you have one end of the spectrum, which, to be honest, is extremely innovative. You have high performance buildings, you have net zero buildings, and a lot of good adoption that's already happening right now. It's like the knowledge is out there, the capabilities are out there. People, and I think it goes without saying that energy efficiency from an economic standpoint, if implemented well, provides extremely short payback periods, and it's commercially viable, right? It's not like, say, a renewable like solar, which required some kind of state support till it reached grid parity initially. So here you have a situation where basically, if implemented well, it is economically viable and there's a real business case. But the question is, why is it not happening? So you have one end of the spectrum where things are already happening right now in a very efficient way. And then of course you have the long tail where it's like chaotic, inefficient, all kind of things keep happening out there. Right? So going by our journey of what we've started doing specifically in a country like India is basically two tracks. We realized that, like what Gary just mentioned, the approach is basically following an integrated urban energy way, not on a standalone basis, through district energy, essentially. That's what a business is, right? So working with UNEP and the District Energy Initiative, we realized that a big part of the missing link is cities. So there is a lot of work going on in terms of trying to assess and see, how cities could actually do much better energy planning, working much closer with the distribution companies for electricity and so on, and the city planning authorities, the urban local bodies, to try at least start looking at more demonstration projects for district energy. So that is one track, right? And the other is basically to really do what Gary just mentioned. Basically, you need to have some kind of risk capital as well coming in, where organizations or private sector players have the ability to assess what kind of technologies are out there, how could you actually package them together, identify relevant projects where you can bring them together, execute them on the ground, and provide them as a service. So more than a product kind of a thinking, I think it's a service kind of a thing that's more relevant, which is what we try to do. We provide cooling as a service, and by making it as a service, we take out all the adoption risks that are there in the market from people trying to figure out what information is out there, what is true, what is not true, how do you make it happen, how do you measure it, right? So that probably is the way to go. And then wherever there are cases where, you know that there is a lot of sustainability benefits that come with it, but probably not economic benefits, then it's only there that you probably need some kind of viability gap funding models or state funding and so on. But otherwise, from what we are seeing, in most cases, these actually do make sexy returns. It's not about not making money. You can actually really both save the planet plus make good money as well, right? So it's about planning and executing it through an integrated approach. That is what is relevant in most cases.
Thank you so much, Sudhir. Monica, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoy listening to the others also. There are so many good ideas and perspectives. I want to also touch upon actually one of the things, Gary, that you mentioned is really throughout the developing world a problem with those countries that were colonialized earlier. Their electricity acts are old. There are hindrances for working behind the meter. There's also after the regulation of the markets, there was a strict regulation on that you cannot influence your consumer. You're strictly supplying electricity, and so the regulatory and legal setup of the electricity market has been a really tough hinder for doing appropriate energy services with efficient solutions in many of the developing countries. And also I like what Sudhir touched upon regarding the service, because it's only nerds who are interested in the product as such. And the market out there is not interested in the product as such. The market out there is interested in a solution. And we're talking about awareness raising and awareness, etc. I think also the supply side or the energy service companies or the technicians or you name it need to also become a little bit more aware of the market actual situation. What is the situation for someone who is, I don't know, living in Cuba, working from home because of COVID, running all their ACs throughout the day? You can go to them and talk about efficiency and electrical alpha value of the AC system, but they're more likely probably interested to get a solution for their situation, be it time planning or any other technical solution to the actual situation. And the same goes for everything, I would say. Another barrier and opportunity in many developing countries is the lack of benchmarking data, lack of baseline data, and lack of understanding of not only the individual customer, but the whole national picture of what a big difference is made.
Okay, great. Well, so, as Dietram just mentioned, so this overall session is about accelerating the market transformations. This is the first of 8. And of course, in this particular room, we're talking about the country perspective. And so we have quite a good range of countries here. And you can see Arjit's from India, Kofi's from Ghana, Peter from Sweden, David is from Kenya, Marcello's from Chile, Andres is from Colombia, but here on behalf of the SDG 7 Youth Efficiency, and Amelie, I believe you're in the UK, but here on behalf of the Energy Savings Trust. So that's who we are as a group.
Yeah, I'm here on behalf. Well, I'm from the Energy Savings Trust. Sorry, but representing, I think, the Efficiency for Access Coalition and the Low Energy Inclusive Appliances Program, which is focused on appliances for off-grid, contact the off-grid appliance.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Thanks for the additional context there. So we have about 45 minutes, and we have sort of 3 sets of questions generically that they've asked us to discuss. The first of them being on the awareness of the benefits of energy efficient products. The second one is really about the learnings, what you're seeing in country. And then the third is about the needs, or the needs to drive demand for energy efficiency. But I'd like to start, go through each of those individually and allow each of you an opportunity to give your thoughts from your country. So I'd like to start off with Andres, actually, from a youth perspective, on this issue of what is consumer awareness on the benefits of energy efficiency, and what is it that industry and government can do to increase awareness? And this will be the same question for everyone, but I'm curious if Andres would be happy to start with the youth perspective. You're currently muted.
Oh, we don't.
Because we could hear you earlier, but you might have to refresh. No, can't hear you. No. Maybe do a refresh and we can come back to you. So with that, then maybe let's go ahead and start with Arjit from an India perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so thank you, Brian. And of course, I would like to thank the host for kind of inviting us to present our perspective in this virtual series on product scrap. So regarding the question, because I know that we have limited time, so I straight away go to the kind of replying to the query. Like the role that awareness has on regarding promoting energy efficient products. So of course in India, I don't know, maybe some of you may be aware about it, but in 2006 onwards, we have started this highly successful standards and labeling program for appliances and products. So prior to the introduction of the standards and labeling program, so price was considered to be the most determining factor for Indian consumers. And it was followed by parameters like kind of the operational cost, the repair and maintenance cost, and of course there was no information that was there in the products. So this absence of any standard information has led to kind of a information asymmetry and confusion among the consumers. But with the introduction of the standards and lending program by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency in India, we have seen a rapid kind of a transformation in the market. Not only has the kind of uptake of energy efficient products has gone up, but I think as Bureau of Energy Efficiency, we have been able to sell like label as a brand really well. And that was the most important success that we had in India. And of course, now the consumers are much more aware about the electricity consumption of their appliances. So, of course, and with this kind of improved awareness, we are ultimately kind of enabling reduction of CO2 emission. I would stop here, and I will maybe we can hear from others as we go.
Yeah, that was helpful. And yeah, certainly some of the work that's been happening in India has really been pushing that awareness up. Andres, do you want to try your audio again? No, we still can't hear you. Maybe unplug all the stuff and try again. But
yes, try to unplug your hands-free. It worked before.
Yeah, did. So maybe Kofi, if you'd be happy to give the perspective from Ghana and West Africa, maybe in general.
Okay. Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Good. Thanks. I think that when it comes to the benefit of energy efficiency awareness, it can never be underestimated, because the overarching strategy or the overarching resource that every country would like to achieve from energy efficiency is a kind of well-seated awareness with the populace who are at the receiving end of all the energy efficiency programs and activities. And if you have very good awareness created, the benefits are enormous. And let me start by looking at it from the angle of the government. You see, it is government's responsibility to ensure safe, reliable, and adequate provision of power. So, in a situation where the consumers are properly informed about what is good and what is bad in terms of product, then you realize that by patronizing the efficient products, it automatically translates into reduction in demand. And if there is reduction in demand, there is avoided generation that the governments will have to cough up money to pursue. A typical example is that in 2007 in Ghana, we did a lighting retrofit. At that time, we were having supply challenges. But when we did the lighting retrofit, we saved about 124 megawatts peak load. Immediately, the government was relieved of about $1 million loan that it was going to take to increase generation capacity. So that is one big benefit to governments, the avoided generation addition. Then the other additional benefit to government can be seen in resource allocation. You know, if you take developing countries, we always don't have the resource in abundance to apply them anyhow. So the little that you have, you want to improve healthcare delivery, you want to improve education, you want to improve other infrastructure. But in a situation where you have uncontrolled increase in demand for electricity, you are under pressure. And the economy has to find resources to meet these demands. And when it happens like that, the other critical sectors of the economy suffers, like the ones that I have mentioned, health, education, and other things, they suffer. So that is one area. The other benefit to the government and the entire populace is that by becoming aware of energy efficiency products and the benefits accrued to it, people do not patronize the inefficient products. And when that happens, the market itself kills the inefficient products. And for that matter, if there are no market for inefficient products, then you don't bring them in. So it's kind of self-cleansing mechanism that protects the market. And for the industry, you know, one important thing that the industry needs is constant supply of power. And where there is moderate use of power from the homes, especially in those of us in developing world, the homes consume more power than industry. So when there is moderate or reduction in demand, it frees a lot of power for productivity. That is, the industry has a lot of power to produce. So I think that for the sake of time, I will end my submission here, and if there is more time, maybe I'll add some more to it. Thank you very much.
No, that's great. Thanks, Kofi. And those links to the other benefits and to the power grids really important as to why awareness is so important. Andres, let's see if you reconnected well.
I don't know. I try. It's possible now. Yeah. Thank God. Well, about the awareness of the customers about the energy efficiency, right? And the energy transition.
From a youth perspective, you know, what is the awareness of energy efficient products, and what is it that industry and government should do to help?
Well, the first one is talk about the youth vision, right? In the SDG number 7 youth constituency, we are working to improve the participation of the youth people in this kind of activities, in this kind of workshop, to represent that the idea that we had the opportunity to change the idea of the young people can be the next generation to improve all the customers' ideas, right? We can transform the behavior in the general customers in the energy efficiency products, right? But we need the space. We need to have the opportunity to talk in these spaces, because we recognize that the climate crisis, the energy transition important, and all these related topics, it's quite important, yes, but I don't know why the organization only invite people from, and it's not, I don't try to be rude, but the most of the panelists is 30, 40, 50 people, and it's quite complicated to give the role of the youth in this case. And in the youth constituency, we are working to develop some projects focused on the energy transition, right? And the efficiency of these projects. And the first thing is we separate or organize these projects by continent. In Latin America, we are working in Chile, in Argentina, in Brazil, in Colombia, in Peru, and in Mexico, with amazing projects that maybe in the next weeks you will know about it. Is the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub, and it's projects about energy transition, energy efficiency, solar energy projects, and you will discover the great opportunity to know people, the young people. We are working for create a new space for the energy transition in the mind of the young people.
Oh yeah, big opportunity there. as the population shift through the years. Getting the youth on board now, getting them in the decision-making process is important. To your point about who's on the panel and who's helping to make policies. So, thank you for that perspective, and certainly looking forward to the Sustainable Energy Hub work. I'd like to go to Emily to hear your perspective and from an access to energy perspective as well.
Thank you. Yes, like I said, I'm mainly representing. Sorry, I'm having some problems. Up on my screen. As the opening speaker mentioned, there are still many people, over 475 million households globally that still have no grid access, or have unreliable access to electricity, and 90% of those are in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. So bringing access to electricity to these households is absolutely vital, and it's simply not going to be viable to do that through grid extensions for many people who, especially in low population density areas, rural communities. So solar home systems and solar hybrid mini grids are vital in achieving SDG 7 of universal energy access, and I guess this and therefore kind of appropriate appliances for use in off-grid contexts are important for driving this access. But this market is very different to the established markets that other speakers are talking about here. It's a nascent market, and whilst consumer awareness is going to be one of the key barriers that need to be overcome, and in particular for some of those appliances that are nearer to market or at market, such as TVs and fans, and increasingly refrigerators and solar water pumps. Actually, the barriers that remain to be overcome in the appliance sector are around the affordability and availability of appliances. I guess for emerging markets, emerging off-grid and weak grid appliance markets, a range of interventions is needed to help make efficiency the default choice amongst consumers, and that includes creating the enabling environment, and standards and labelling programs are not exist in these markets currently, but also there's still a strong need for R&D funding and business model development to accelerate innovation, and financing is a particularly important issue to address to make these appliances affordable for the households.
Great. Thanks for that perspective.
So yeah, well, consumer awareness is an issue, and but the bigger issues to tackle are affordability and availability, and also distribution and access to the.
Thank you for that. So we just received the note that we have about 20 minutes left, so we're trucking through our time pretty quickly here. But let's keep working our way around. Peter, if I can go to you, hearing the perspective from the Swedish Energy Agency.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So we are part of this European Union, and like in India, we have maps and labels since decades back. So you can think it's an established framework and everything should run smoothly, but actually it's a constant work. So the Swedish Energy Agency, we have to work on a daily basis with this to inform consumers, industry, retailers, all the actors along the chain, actually. So I was thinking about the consumer awareness. Well, the labels are very good for that, of course, inform consumers about the least life cycle cost, really. And that is a challenge in itself, because many times you just double on the purchase price, and it's very hard for you to understand it's the running cost that actually matters. So there is a particular important thing, I think, also for maybe emerging economies to really explain that. For us, it's also about the quality aspects to inform the consumers. If you really want to contribute, I mean, people are aware of climate change here, of course, and want to contribute. And then we say, well, you can do that. You can buy green, of course. So we spend a lot of time to explaining that. And also, I think it was Coffee mentioned multiple benefits, that there are also other things than just the money. Good windows, insulation, etc., actually makes your indoor climate much more comfortable. So that is also another thing where we work a lot with. For the industry, I mean, again, we try to encourage them to be good. Not everyone is good, maybe, but if it's just about money, well, they can earn money on being green anyway. So sell green and you will earn your money anyway. You don't have to sell just the crappy products just to earn the money, which is really important also. And also for the progressive players, we think it's important from the governmental side, to ensure, well, yes, we have market surveillance, we have a lot of other actions to keep the level playing field there. So if you are progressive, you will earn on innovation and being in the front rather than just be above the bar. So I mean, the whole framework, I think it was Ariel said it in the beginning, you need a whole policy framework there, speaking with all these acts in different ways. But of course, the consumers are super important, because that really creates the pull effect in this push-pull scheme.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for that. That reframing it back is
yeah.
David, in Kenya, you know, what are the what's the awareness level, and what can you see industry and government doing, given that you've got a new energy efficiency strategy?
Thank you, Brian. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you. There might be a slight delay, but.
All right, then thank you very much, colleagues, for giving me this chance to share a bit of what Kenya is doing on energy efficiency. But to answer the question quickly, is that the awareness has been there, it is being created, but it is not quite effective, because there before we didn't have a firm framework. But thanks to the Sustainable Energy for All initiative that we got signatory to in 2015, that we realized now that we needed to act in terms of energy efficiency. And the energy efficiency program was one of the identified action agendas for the country, with clear goals on what was to be done. But we could not do that much without a framework which is intact. And in 2019, we enacted, reviewed, and again, it was recognized that we needed a program of energy efficiency in the country, and a suitable organization, institution was mandated to do that. That is the regulatory framework, arm of the ministry, that is EPRA. And from that, we sought to link with appropriate collaborators. And in this case, we were lucky to approach the Hub for Energy Efficiency, that is Copenhagen Center. And as a country, we agreed to work together through an MOU which is lasting 5 years. And one of the key actions was to develop a strategy for energy efficiency and conservation. And from 2018, we've been analyzing, realizing what we needed to do. And we realized that the new thinking is now that we will work in 5 sectors, namely industry and agriculture, buildings, households, utilities, and in transport. So in these, we have undertaken two things, and I can say in Kenya we were not doing very well. Labeling program for limited appliances. But going forward, we have now that we need to do concepts and proposals to work together with the private sector to see them being developed. So I can say we are now acting plans for the strategy that can be informed by these discussions. That I can say, yes, we have been trying to do awareness, but without a good framework, we've not been succeeding so much.
Okay, no, that's very helpful to see where you are and where you're moving towards, and certainly the progress that India's made since 2006 and Europe has made through the years and beyond is great. So I'll go to Marcelo next. And what I'm thinking is, since we've got a little bit less than 15 minutes left, but Marcelo will answer now, and then I want to open up the remaining 10 minutes to having you say what the one big thing is that you see as a need for countries. And Marcelo, so you could talk through what the consumer awareness is, and also what that one big need is, and then we'll go on to the others.
I try to speak quickly. So for my view, the consumer is increasingly aware of the benefit of efficient product, but information and consumer goodwill are not enough. It's not enough because we need to talk about the rules. In our case, the first step is labeling, next steps, and then we try to support plans with the most affordable to access more ethical for this. So the private sector must be seen as a partner, but a balance must be struck. The private sector doesn't always agree to implement mandatory measures. I think this is a problem. In my experience, the main role of the state is to maintain a transparent and rigorous regulatory system, with reliable information can be labeled under and as part of strategy. And what is easy is we must comply with the regulator. But it's part of the problem because a large part of the career that is advanced for forcing in energy efficiency policies has to do with the lack of trust between the different players. So with me, this is an important barrier, and we need more confidence. So this is a resume for the
And yeah, I think it's got Jazz, so you can actually click on mute if you want to mute that. That would work. Thank you, Marcelo. So now in the final bits here, we've got about a minute per person, I would say. What's the one big need or one big learning that you have that you think should be brought into any other country? What's this one lesson that you've learned in your countries? And I'll go through the same order. So we'll start with Arjit.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. So, I mean, talking about India, one big need is, of course, the cooling need. And it has been there since the last decade. And we have seen in various reports and publications. In fact, the Future of Cooling report of IEA that was published in 2018 also highlighted the need for kind of efficient products in the cooling sector. Of course, in India also, we have come up now with this India Cooling Action Plan. And I think we are amongst the few countries in the world who have come up with a kind of a comprehensive plan, which is targeting not only the efficiency part, but also the climate-related part as well. So I think that need is very clear, and the cooling demand is expected to grow by around 6 times Right now, the penetration of air conditioners, if you talk about the room air conditioners, it's only around less than 8 to 10% in India, but it is projected to grow around 30% in the next 10 to 15 years from now on. So clearly the need is very visible as far as we are concerned. And I think we are also tackling the need in fact that as far as the active cooling load is concerned, we are continuously ratcheting up the standards for the room air conditioners. And as far as the reducing the passive building load is concerned, we have come up with the building codes, which are designed to address the thermal comfort of the buildings. So I think that's it from my side. And the paucity of time, I will stop here.
Yeah, thank you, Arjit. Yeah, so seeing that you actually, your need to drive energy efficiency actually comes from a fundamental need of cooling and the policies that can go into actually addressing that need. Kofi, from a Ghana perspective, what do you see as the need in terms of to drive demand for energy efficient products?
Maybe before I touch that one, just a second on the transition to the next generation. Ghana has identified a big need that we spent sums of money on public awareness creation. So what we have decided doing now is to revise the curricula of school. So that has been done. From next year. We're going to have a pilot where children are going to start imbibing energy efficiency right from creche up to high school. So in future, there will not be the need to look for money to do public education. And that is a big leap that we have taken.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, in terms of what is driving the thing in Ghana, it is visible that income levels are rising. The heat is getting intensive, so people need their comfort. And for that matter, the demand for air conditioners have started rising. And there is an urgent need for us to do something quickly about it. So what we have done is that we have revised the old standards to make it a little bit high by way of the baseline, so that will ensure that only efficient air conditioners come into the country, and that is to protect the grid. So that is where we are now.
Yeah, that protection against the dumping is a real important one. So thanks for adding that in as well. On to Andres, from the youth perspective, what do you see as what's the need in terms of driving towards energy efficient products?
Well, you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think will be just 3 topics. The first one is the capacity building implementation in the youth people. The second one is the making a strategic partnership development, I think. And the third one is the real compromise for the government to create a public politic of energy efficiency and energy transition, because the people need to know what is the government want to do, right? And this is a normal topic in all the Latin American countries, I think. I'm sorry for Marcelo if I'm doing a bad comment, but we need to create a better communication between the government and the people, because the people don't know what is happening in the high political level, right? And yes, it's the same people doing the political things, but well, we need to create real drivers to this. I think these 3 topics is the basic on this, and I want to give a step forward to talk with Marcelo in the singular session to talk about how we can improve this situation in Chile with our national focal point, Barbara Neira, there in Chile. And thank you.
Okay, great. Amelia, over to you. Yes, yes.
Sorry, was that Emily? Yeah. Hi. So our key learning is that, whilst this, the off-grid appliance market for off-grid appliances powered by renewables is still very small and growing. It is growing rapidly and is expected to double in size by 2030. And whilst a lot of investment is going into developing the technologies and trying to deploy those at scale, there's a need for governments to start thinking about creating the necessary enabling environment to enable the market and to grow and protect consumers going forward. And a lot. So I'm not going to go into the detail of that, but we have, under the Efficiency for Access Coalition, prepared a number of policy briefings and support for policymakers to help them to work through how they might go about doing that. And the last point I'd like to make is, alongside that, whilst the investments in technology development are expected to bring costs down and help companies to grow and unlock economies of scale, further innovation is needed, and in particular around consumer financing and improved access to finance of all kinds, from grant, equity, debt, is needed to help companies scale up. So, alongside policies like standards and labelling programs, governments should also consider finance, how they can support financing.
So, great. No, thank you for that. We've run out of time, but I'm wondering if Peter and David, if maybe in 10 seconds each, you could say one key thing. Peter, go ahead first.
I can speak very fast. So learnings, you need a constant monitoring of markets and technology development, and then revise the regulations constantly. And then when it comes to the biggest need for us, is at least to understand how we can use connected products. Connectivity can lead to optimized systems like buildings, can also be a condition for participating on an aggregation market of power. That is something we deal a lot with. And then I stop.
That's perfect. And David, similar, something quick that you're thinking of.
Regional cooperation is key in our area because our borders are quite porous, and so harmonization of policies is very important in our region. And thanks to you, because they are trying for this.
That is perfect. Thank you all. Now I have to figure out how to get this all into something that's presented back to everybody, but thanks for everything that you've done here. And as is mentioned, go back over to sessions and back into the festival.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to introduce myself, it's Paul Kellett, Program Manager with UNIDO for Efficiency, Global Market Transformation Program, working with about 40 countries globally across all global regions, and we're based in the Economy Division of UN Environment in Paris. And just ask everyone to give a short introduction. I'll start with you, if I may, Jalal.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Jalal Shabshou. I'm Chief Investment Officer at the African Development Bank. I have joined the bank lately, now almost 3 years, where I was working as energy efficiency expert with one of the leading Canadian company. I'm involved in energy efficiency since now it's more than 25 years. I'm still young. So I have participated in many programs for governments and the international donors institution for project development and implementation. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jalal. Montai from Econolair, a senior energy efficiency expert with Econolair.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon. My name is
Tone. I'm the Senior Energy Efficiency Expert with EconoLayer. EconoLayer, we work in a number of venues, mostly energy efficiency and also energy efficiency financing on projects around the world. Myself, I'm working on a number of energy efficient street lighting and also financing projects in Southeast Asia currently. It's very nice to meet you all.
Very much, Montai. Milena, from the Global Environment Facility, pleasure to have you. Thank you very much.
You're on mute, Milena.
We still can't hear you, Milena.
Suggesting, Paul, that we go to someone else while she organizes.
Yeah, we go to yourself, Steve. Steve is the Executive Director of the International Copper Association. Thank you very much indeed, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having us participate. As the name implies, the International Copper Association, or ICA, represents the world's copper industry. We manage programs around the world that try to make a positive impact on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And our track record is strong in this area. I think we're probably as closely connected to the global SD agenda as any metal or material. And energy efficiency is the largest portion of our work. And we're proud to be one of the founding partners in United for Efficiency that Paul spoke about. And we work closely with Paul and his team, and looking forward to a good discussion today. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much, Steve. And you're very welcome, Michael. You're Group Director, Operational Marketing at the Global Industrial side of
Yes, thank you, everybody. So ENGIE is a large European utility, and our purpose is to accompany our customers, industry, and cities on the road towards carbon neutrality. So, and we are also long-term partners of UNEP, for instance, of the District Energy System Initiative. And so I'm very happy and very glad to be here.
Thank you all very much, everybody. And we have the easy task maybe of connecting with Milena in the Jeff. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me or still nothing? Yes, great, fantastic. So I'm a climate change specialist at the Global Environment Facility. I've been at the GEF for the past 6 years as the operating entity of the Climate Change Convention. Energy efficiency is part of our bread and butter and our support for developing countries. And I know we've been partners with many of the organizations here. So thank you for that. I'm very excited to participate in this, especially we believe this year will be crucial for us as we go on to our next replenishment, which will be GEF 8. These discussions will definitely inform that. Thank you for having us.
Very much indeed, everybody. And we have a real conundrum. We have to solve the global climate change problem and energy problem in 30 minutes. And we have been given the task of enablers for progress in accelerating the global market transformation to energy efficient products. And I have 3 questions where I guess we can just work our way around. The first one is, what has been the experience of your organization in supporting programs promoting energy efficient products? And I guess if I start with perhaps Steve, if you would be so kind, in terms of your experience in supporting energy efficient products globally.
Sure. Well, for us, MEPS, minimum energy performance standards, are the key. If you look at the status of MEPS around the world, you see that in the non-OECD countries, the MEPS are generally, if they exist at all, they're far below best available technology, but in more often the MEPS just aren't in place. So our experience is trying to work with countries to show them the benefits of MEPS and then the total market transformations that come from it. And one thing we're proud of is that we see the ability for regions to work together on MEPS and not just individual countries. And that really helps to accelerate, this movement towards energy efficiency. For example, through an initiative called SHINE in the ASEAN, we've helped 10 countries there to harmonize on standards for room air conditioners. So we have a model that works, and what we're trying to do now through U4E is to work with other regions and say, can you work together rather than trying to work separately? That also helps to bring the cost down for the products. If you're manufacturing an air conditioner and you have only one product that is needed to meet the standards rather than a different modified product for each country, it achieves economies of scale, and it brings the costs down. It enables the countries to share resources. You can have one regional testing center rather than each country needing a testing center. You can partner on monitoring, verification, and enforcement rather than each country trying to build that capacity. So I think my initial intervention, I would just say, if there's a way for the regions to work more closely together, I think that we could see greater progress.
That's a very good opening, Steve. Thank you very much. I'm just wondering, in terms of Econolar's experience, Maiton, in that context of supporting the actual programs to deliver effective market transformation.
Yes, so I can't agree with Steve more. We've worked together in the past, and I think it is the basics. It's getting maps, making sure that the right levels are achieved, having the right infrastructure to support very basic things, support maps, being able to do the analysis, having to prepare the market so that you can actually bring in the products and creating access to these energy efficient products is key, because in a number of when we started in these markets, they're very disjointed. There's always a race to the bottom in terms of pricing, and so when you have a race to the bottom, there's not much quality, and so there's always a challenge the MAPS has to uphold, which is you want to introduce reasonably good performing products, but not completely out of everybody's price range. So those are all the issues that we deal with on a regular basis, and I fully support what Steve has said. If we can harmonize or at least align interests in these technical these terms to bring products, whether it's existing or emerging, that's half the battle. So I think there's others, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation, so I'll stop there, and we can go around.
Thank you very much indeed. And just to bring Michael in from NG perspective.
Yes, thank you, Paul. So at this stage of the discussion, I would like to propose three points from our experience. The first one is on the world market. We see that state-of-the-art appliances and air conditioners are at least twice as efficient as the average, and sometimes are 3 times more efficient than the worst performing products. So the first thing would be we can have huge improvement if we choose the right technologies. That's the first point I want to submit. The second one is we have been working with UNEP and the Cool Coalition, other instances, to promote district cooling, because for dense areas like city centers or industrial parks, district cooling again gives twice as efficient as standalone systems, and allows to make demand-side management, to green the rooftops, so it mitigates the heat island effect. So it has a lot of advantages. It's a very little-known solution and can be a big contributor. That was with my second suggestion. And the third one is that in our experience, we are, like some other companies, we're experts in energy savings performance contract. So I would recommend that you work with expert companies, that you put in place stringent KPIs, but that you let these companies then do the technological and operational work to guarantee to you savings. It's a very powerful tool, and in our experience, you can gain 10, 20, sometimes 30% of energy efficiency, and you share with the customer by using the proper technologies, the proper operational maintenance, online metering and digital platform, of course. So you can, with a whole syncretic and global approach, you can improve very, very significantly energy efficiency.
Thank you very much. I will come back around with some questions on the recommendations and in terms of the markets that might be suitable, in particular for the type of product and services, and what you might think about that for developing and emerging economies in particular. Michael, thank you very much. Milena, you have very many programs, and be very interested to hear your perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I definitely agree with the input so far. At the GEF, we've followed this two-pronged approach of having our national projects where we're really building that foundational policy and enabling environment, so focused on MEPS, of course, but also trying out new business models, piloting some of these energy efficiency investments, as well as new business models such as ESCOs in certain countries, of course. But then we've also put a lot of effort into developing these accelerators. And the reason for that is because we absolutely believe that there is a lot to learn from each other. And there's a lot that can be done by harmonizing some of these standards at a global or regional level, and by piloting it. And it's kind of a reinforcing cycle, because these accelerators have then led countries to come back to the GEF for additional financing to scale up some of those pilots. And so that's what we want to be seeing. We want to make sure that these accelerators and these initiatives are leading to a pipeline of projects. And obviously the GEF is not the only financier there. We have the Green Climate Fund and of course the development banks. So for us, it's absolutely key to help build this pipeline of projects. And besides that, I do want to point out that even though the GEF has been in this business for a long time, for over 30 years, we've been supporting some of these projects. And I think we're starting to get countries come back to us and say, well, we've already done it. And I think it's time to really refresh. As we said, we're very behind in terms of these standards. And so from the GEF perspective, we want to make sure that we re-engage with countries again to elevate those standards to best practice. So for us, finding out how to raise that ambition is particularly key with respect to the enhancement of NDCs for the Paris Agreement, with respect to long-term strategies that countries are developing. We think energy efficiency needs to be a key part of that. And if we're able to help countries determine how energy efficiency can help them through assessments of job creation, et cetera, I think that type of information will be key to inform our policymakers to really engage in this topic and make sure they continue engaging, as opposed to moving towards more sexy topics. Like we've seen in the past 4 years, countries are really focusing on electromobility, for example. And that's absolutely key. Energy efficiency in the transport sector is huge, but how do we make sure that they're also continuing to develop their standards for energy efficiency appliances, buildings, et cetera?
You, Paul.
Still on mute, Paul. We can't hear you.
Sorry.
No.
Still can't hear you.
Well, we've not heard from Jalal yet, yeah?
Yeah, so do you hear us, Paul? Now, just to make sure that he's hearing us also.
Yeah, we've lost his image as well, or at least I have. So
I can see him. Maybe Jalal, you should just continue.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll continue from my side. What we are doing on the on supporting programs of the African Development Bank, we are, as Junior, we are supporting countries for market assessment and opportunities identification. Some countries, it is not most of the countries, need really technical assistance and support to understand the current market situation, practices, identify barriers, making analysis of the consumers and user behavior for equipment acquisitions, usage, and operation, in order to be able to evaluate and prioritize programs and implementation options. Most of the countries, they lack of capacities and they don't understand where to go or even sometimes where to start. However, we are also supporting leading or front-runner countries in the energy efficiency field to gauge implementations alternatives, considering the country's specificities, sector's risk, and best financial mechanisms for project implementations. On the other hand, we are working also with governments on the policy and regulation side for strategy development, programs evaluations, capacity buildings, and general assistance based on countries' requests. And we are also providing what we call technical assistance, and this is on specific field. Notably, we are focusing actually on the super ESCO implementations and ESCO market development for specific countries, for example, such as Morocco, Kenya, and potentially Senegal. We are working on all these aspects, technical, financial, and also capacity buildings to make sure, because we need enabling environment for program implementations. And fortunately or fortunately, that are leading some of this basic work that need to be done in the early stage to support all the activities needed or putting in place the most important pillars to have an enabling environment for real program implementations and follow-up. So this is generally what we are doing in that field. Paul, back to you.
Still can't hear you, Paul.
We are still not.
Can you hear us? Can you nod? If you, oh, there we go. I think he's finally refreshing.
Okay, so I guess this is the best option, just to reconnect. Maybe we'll have a better chance for having him back with the audio.
Well, you know, if I may, since we're waiting for Paul, I think that, yeah, I think, Jalal, your comments and Milena's before them really are a good segue into this question on financing, right? And, you know, one of the three questions we were asked to look at here is what are the biggest remaining gaps to drive financing towards energy efficiency? And in my perspective, and I've been in this space not as long as usual, but I've been in this space for a while, and you know, this is the big nut that needs to be cracked. Paul, are you able to hear you now?
Hopefully,
there you go. Okay.
Yes. Good.
I was just segueing us, and you could take over into the question on financing.
Perfect.
You know, what are the gaps? Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. I just had a quick follow-up in terms of Michael, with the particular countries and markets in relation to services and the important question of affordability and what their experience might be. Just to briefly touch on that, Michael, if you wouldn't mind.
I think we need regulation, of course. If possible, building a regulation and ideally a carbon tax, some way to have life cycle assessments, because as we discussed again, some of you, Ton, I think, my Ton, you explained that cheap appliances, if you think only about the installation cost, then you will drive very cheap products which will not perform. So I think we absolutely need to find a way to have life cycle assessment, not only installation, but also over the lifetime of the project, energy maintenance costs, to compare apples with apples. That's absolutely crucial. So we need regulation, and I think the UNEP and the different other international bodies have a big role to play there. That's one thing. The second one is also behavioral aspects. For instance, we noticed that if you cool at 25 degrees instead of 18, like in the Middle East or in the US, you can save 20 to 30% energy. So behavioral aspects are really key too, and can make a huge difference. And then, like I already said, I don't want to repeat myself, but state-of-the-art appliances, district cooling, energy-saving performance contract, digital, so these aspects. But I think regulation, behavior, and technology, you need to combine all of them, and that's possible everywhere in the world. But I think regulation is a crucial aspect.
Super, thank you very much. And just to go back to Milena in the GEF in relation to the programs and the priorities, just seeing that many countries still don't have minimum energy performance standards, particularly if we look at Africa, for example, and elsewhere. And I'm just wondering, is there a plan to deal with that, or what the experience of the GEF has been in that context?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we are obviously driven by national priorities and we respond to national needs. So it's very important for us that the countries come to us with those priorities identified. And one of the ways in which the priorities can be better identified and therefore drive some of these investments from our perspective is if they are in their national plans. So for example, in the NDCs. I think particularly in the African continent, you know, there is, because of the needs for energy access, that is currently the priority. But we are seeing a lot of cities that are leading on energy efficiency. And I think in the meantime, obviously we need regulation at the national level, but in the time that takes, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to also support cities that are taking the lead in that respect and to share those experiences so that eventually we might be able to scale up at the country level. But for some of these cases, we've actually seen quite a bit of leadership in the continent from that perspective. And we do that not only through these initiatives, but also we have Sustainable Cities Impact Program, where at the city level, we're talking about policy for energy efficiency systematically with other policies. So we're talking as well about municipal solid waste management, transport, et cetera. So it's a part of a bigger picture, but I still think that is really key to scaling up elsewhere.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. And just going on to Steve's segue into financing and what are the biggest remaining gaps to financing. And I read remaining gaps rather circumspectively because I think there's a lot of gaps to direct financing. But perhaps, Jalal, you have quite an experience in this sector.
Yes, it is. Well, always we said it is really financing, it is the main problem or no. But unfortunately, a part of the question, the answer is yes, but it's not only the main problem. Usually we said that if we do have a good program or project, let's say focus on programs. If we have a good program and we have involved all the important stakeholders, the problems will not be financing, because when we are talking about energy efficiency, we always see that usually we don't need financing since the savings will pay for the investment, and this is the general rules. So while we are focusing on that, while there is many other things important to work on it, especially from the design side. And as I said earlier, the main problems or the main gaps that we are seeing, it is that the energy efficiency, it's not a real priority for governments. Especially I'm talking about the African countries where the energy efficiency it is not there at all in their agendas, and we need to work on that. We need to work on establishing objectives to help them to have this strategy or national energy efficiency action plan to put in place the need or the minimum needed steps further before the financing. And then yes, there is a financing. If I take the experience from such countries. Advanced a little bit in the African countries where they are working on this financing scheme on the different one based on the needs. We are working on the on-bill financing. We are working also on specific funds for specific sectors, but also we are working, and this is what we were since now more than 2 years, working on the establishment of the super ESCO concept in the different countries, where they will lead by example, when they will establish all the needed pillars for that, for the capacity building, for the financial part which is needed to be there, also for supporting the ESCO market development, and all the implementation. This is what we are in our objective, that all the implementation will be done by the private sector. So we will create an enabling environment, not only enabling, but enabling market, where everything will be there, not only the financial part. So we are trying to do our best, and especially to answer the country's needs from the financial part based on the program. So as you know, the financial is based on the programs, based on the risk, and based also on the country specificities. But we do have different models or financial mechanisms that, as I said, from direct loan even to the financial institutions, or to the governments, or even to some specific entities that they can also lead the implementation of the different programs.
Great, thank you very much, and apologies for the echo on the line. I'm just going to go to Maitan in O'Connell just on the financing question.
I'm happy to elaborate. I want to just go back. I can't agree with Milena more. I think we have to be able to empower not just the national governments, but we have to go to cities and where the leadership is, where's the will, where's the political will. I think we need to be able to support that. And then the next point, which is to segue into this financing question, is actually it's just financing access. I'm working currently on a project in Vietnam, where now the Vietnamese the national government is now at their debt ceiling, and they're reluctant to take on any more debt. And so now the cities themselves, we're trying to enable the cities themselves to take on projects, but they, the public sector need to be able to take on, to be able to have access to low-cost financing. And so you start the project on one end, and we realize that the issue here is not the cities themselves don't have the will, and it's not that they don't have the will. They actually need the support, and so we're creating sort of city level support or municipal level support to financing, because without access to financing, things like ESCOs, PPPs, you can't put those in place. And we're trying to promote the ESCO industry in Vietnam, for example. But the challenge, the country's been working in energy efficiency for about 10 years, and they have basically 10 ESCOs operating in the whole country, and financing access is one of the issues. So I see that Michael is raising his hand, so I'll stop, and I'm glad that I'm able to keep the ball rolling on this.
I'll come back to you, Steve, in a second. But Michael, want to add something? Please go ahead.
Just very shortly, what we see is that financing is not really an issue, because there are infrastructure pension funds which have hundreds of billions of dollars. They desperately want to invest. So if you manage to make a project bankable through, like you say, there might also PPPs, public-private partnerships, financing is not really an issue. There again, it's a regulatory issue. And like Milena said, to work with cities, I think it's the right level. And we found that you can sign concession contracts all over the world. We did it in the US, which has huge needs in infrastructure. We did it in Malaysia, in the Middle East. So I think if you can mobilize the financial resources of the private sector, it's fairly easy to have access to funds, but it needs to have competent companies which allow the project to become bankable. Sorry, I was a little long.
Oh, that's fine. Sorry, Steve. I'm sure you have a bit to say on financing.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Michael went before me, because he just uttered a word that in my mind is the biggest gap, and it's bankable projects. Okay, let me take about 30 seconds to put us on a journey to get there. Every year, the IEA publishes its global outlook on energy efficiency, and invariably each year they say we need to triple the amount of investment in energy efficiency. Okay, a couple of years ago at a conference, a speaker from the World Bank said, with all due respect to the IEA, that number is wrong. It's actually closer to 9 or 10 times. Whatever, but he said whatever that number is, that we need to increase, less than 1% of that inefficient pot of money for energy efficiency is going towards capacity building and technical assistance. Those are the enabling environments that Jalal and Milena spoke about, right? And thank goodness for organizations like the VEF and the African Development Bank that recognize. The issue is that if we don't finance that upfront work that's not profitable, that capacity building and technical assistance to get those projects into those nice, neat boxes with a bow on it that makes them bankable, we're not going to get past this barrier of financing for energy efficiency. So my message would be to the banks is that we need to take a different look at this and to focus on creating those enabling environments if you want those big bankable projects. Very few organizations are willing to put in that upfront cost to lead to the bankable projects. My 2 cents, I'll get off the pulpit. Thank you.
No, that's super, Steve. That's critically important. And I think, Milena, the VEF in establishing pilot projects and very successful ones in many cases, and the link between GCF and financing might be interesting. Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. We are one of those funds. You know, we're small comparably to the GCF and also comparably to development banks and other partners. But we attempt to use those funds in a way that is the most efficient. And so what we're trying to do really is build that enabling environment, focus our grant funding into that technical assistance that Steve is referring to, try to pilot something and make it ready for scalability. And that's where our partnership and coordinated engagement with the GCF comes up. And so far, actually, I don't think we've had a strong partnership on energy efficiency yet, but I'm sure we'll get there. But we are working with the GCF in many other topics, including in electromobility, where we're making sure that the country has the feasibility studies that it requires, that it has the enabling environment, that it's actually passing the targets and the policies and regulations that will help then, you know, scale up with GCF funding. And then from there, obviously scale up to private sector finance. So I couldn't agree more. I think the problem is that the need is still very, very large. And, you know, we work in over 150 countries. So there is still a lot of need and a lot of work to be done.
At the last, to make any last comment before I finish up.
I just wanted to make clear, you know, that the access to finance, it's not the financing, it's access, you know, making the projects bankable at the municipal level is very important. And I think that's one of the keys that we need to crack.
Yeah, super. Thank you very much. Jalal, what you're going to mention?
Because as I said, there is many gaps, and unfortunately, if I just take a little bit of this, especially in Africa, there is a lot of people working on the regulatory side, others on financing, others on capacity buildings, and however, the main problem is there is no good package that they can bring everything together, and this is sometimes we are investing a lot of efforts, a lot of money on capacity building and everything, but there is no program, there is no realization, there is no implementation, and this is why we at the African government, we are trying to bring a complete package through this super ASCO concept where we can bring in place everything there, and especially, which is really important, supporting the development of the bankable project, but also to provide a pipeline of projects. I mean, we know that government buildings, it is thousands and thousands of projects, so bringing this pipeline of project with the financing, the capacity building, with putting in place the structure that they will develop and implement, I guess this is the best option that we are working on it, and we would like to share with all the different countries in Africa and to implement it and replicate it.
Thank you very much indeed. And just to emphasize, the GEF support has been critical in our work globally. And we would really like opportunity to scale that, looking at the next round of GEF. And it's been mentioned here repeatedly in terms of capacity building, technical assistance, and creating the framework for finance and bankable projects. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to go back to the main session and provide them with the benefit of all of your inputs. Thank you very kindly indeed.
We wait for Philip. Let me set the scene. I am Bettina Schreck. I will be your moderator for this session, and I'm part of the UNIDO Department of Environment. I joined this year from the UNIDO Department of Energy, so I've been in this field for some time. Imagine that we would not be in the Corona time, we would all be waltzing away at the Rittersaal in the Vienna Hofburg Palace. And I want you to visualize the Rittersaal, very beautiful, very nicely decorated. And that's where we should be in July. So keep that as a goal for next year, that we will all see each other face to face. I see that Philip has some difficulties, but yes, we'll get started. For all of our audience there, today we have 8 speakers that are joining us from a number of organizations. I'd rather ask each one of you to present yourselves. So I'll quickly go around the table before we kick into the meeting. Sumedi, I don't know if you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon. I'm Sumedha Malviya. I work with the World Resources Institute in India, and my interest areas are energy efficiency in buildings and appliances. Really happy to be here.
Thank you very much. James, would you like to take on?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I don't know if you can see me. I can't see myself on the screen. Yeah, my name is James Wakaba. I work for CLASP out of the Nairobi office. I'm the director of the Africa office, which is based in Nairobi. And CLASP, we are about better appliances for people on the planet. That's our entire remit. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James. Welcome, Philip. Nice to see you. We're just going quickly around the table and presenting ourselves. So would you like to present yourself, please?
Yes, hello, everybody. Nice to see some familiar faces in this round. Hey, Alvin. Hey, Kevin. The rest of this group. Very glad to be part of this conversation. I'm Philip Munzinger, working for GIZ, managing GIZ cooling project, Asia being based as headquarters in Frankfurt, and yeah, dealing a lot with product efficiency, mainly looking at the air conditioning systems in buildings. I'm happy to contribute to this.
Thank you very much. Kevin, would you like to continue?
I think you are in mute, Kevin.
That's better. Thank you, Bettina. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Kevin Lane from the International Energy Agency. I'm within the Energy Efficiency Division, and one of my areas is energy using product, which it has been for maybe 25 years. So I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to discussing some interesting topics with the rest of my esteemed colleagues.
Thank you very much. Then we can continue to Charles. And
can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. I'm Charles Diaz. I work at the ECOWAS Renewable Energy Efficiency Center, and I am in charge of the energy efficiency program at ECRI.
Thanks. Daniel?
Yes, thank you, Bettina. And hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Magallon. I'm the Managing Director of BASE. BASE is a specialized center that is focused in developing financial instruments and business models for energy efficiency and renewable energy. So we have been quite specialized in this work, trying to test different innovative ideas to bring energy efficiency to different markets and sectors.
Thanks. And Alvin, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see also some very familiar faces. My name is Alvin Jose. I'm a senior energy specialist with Sustainable Energy for All. I come basically just recently came into Vienna just 3 months ago, so very new to the organization. I'm leading the work over here on clean energy transition for energy efficiency, and happy to contribute. Looking forward to this session.
So with that, I'll move straight into the discussion. So the topic that we are meant to discuss is data and evidence. And my take on this session is that we need to show how data and documented evidence contributes to achieving the goal. So I would ask Kevin if he wants to start on describing how data sets are required to better inform policymakers on climate impact of energy efficiency products.
So yeah, at the IEA, that's one area that we specialize in. We have some very large data sets from most countries around the world, both on the supply side and the demand side. But I guess for this particular session, we're mostly trying to understand what are the energy using products role in energy consumption. So there are some standard data sets we need, whether that's ownership, sales, how products are actually used, so we can understand the energy consumption that's currently happening around the world. So that's just a statement of where the status is. Next, I guess we need to understand could be in the future, and those are projecting data into the future. So those are more assumptions rather than real data sets as such. However, I think the most important data sets that we really need for energy using products is to understand what's on the market in terms of their range of efficiency, but then also what the cost of those products are, just as a clear statement of the cost versus efficiency if we are going to drive efficiency into the future. May also be, I'll quickly add two other ones which others may add on to. One is also understanding how these energy using products perform in real life versus what's tested in the laboratory. So how they're performing over time, not real ones. And then other data sets, there could be a whole long list, but it's understanding what's the evidence of improved efficiency, just how does it improve job creation, how does it make for better comfort within homes, say. So I think there's a whole range of data sets that we need to collect for, and we have some of those, and we have quite large gaps still. But I'll let others.
Thanks, Kevin, for putting it out at the global level. May I ask the rest of the speakers to address this from their constituencies and the regions or countries where they work in? And I don't have a raise your hand function in this online platform, so just please go ahead and raise your hand. Daniel, por favor.
Yeah, so well, I agree that there's some kind of disconnection in some regarding information, specifically, and from different actors, specifically, for example, for policymakers. I think there's as well a little bit of understanding that on the commercial benefits and commercial opportunities that this type of technologies present. So, for instance, one of the main barriers that energy efficiency presents is that normally is perceived as a more expensive technology, given that people need to pay 10 or 15 or 20% more in these type of equipments than a conventional equipment. But that's something that we need to change in the mindset of people, because at the end, it's actually the conventional equipment ends up to be more expensive if you accumulate all the costs related with energy and maintenance of the equipment. Just referring to cooling, for example, we have been doing some analysis where just 90% of the total accumulated cost represents the energy and maintenance, and just 10% on the equipment itself. And people is taking decisions only on the 10%, not taking decision on the 90%. I think this type of small details, small information can help a lot policymakers to as well draft some policy that could be aligned market and commercial practices.
Thanks. Alvin, please.
Yeah, I think, sorry, Philip. I think both of us raised at the same time our hands. I think one of the biggest underlying issues why energy efficiency does not take the same kind of interest sometimes at decision and policy making level is because of the way data comes in and it's kind of represented across the field. I think one very interesting way that we at SEforALL look at is how energy efficiency plays a role in terms of access and the clean energy transition story when we try to link it with the Paris Agreement. So I can, again, taking one of the most recent examples that we worked on, which is the Cooling for All work that SEforALL does, is the Chilling Prospects 2020 report that we came out. We basically tried to look at the cooling access gaps around the world, and which basically shows some stark numbers, like over 1 billion people are still lacking some sort of cooling access. Almost over 2 billion people still have some sort of inefficient cooling device. So a lot of this data capturing and the way we need to translate it into future policy making is something which is still lacking. And I feel like this is a work which has to be cutting across a lot of agencies because everyone has their own areas of interest and the way they enter. But it's important that this is kind of synergized and brought to at the forefront as far as energy efficiency interest uptake is concerned.
So Mehdi, I see you nodding. Would you like to add?
Sure, and just to sort of build on to Alvin's point on why there has been such major challenges in getting acceptance for the collection of data related to energy efficiency. I think as a community, we have not been able to really strike a balance between the depth of data that needs to be collected and the breadth of the information that we need, which has resulted in circumstances where it is extremely resource intensive to collect a lot of the data sets, especially speaking from the point of view of developing countries where institutions for collecting data at the local level do not exist, and their capacity needs to be significantly enhanced and strengthened. And even we have been also not very successful in finding the right use cases. Alvin alluded to the point of how there are different departments which have their own templates for data collection, but what exactly will this data be used for and how they themselves can really benefit from the data collection process, and really finding that level of ownership in data collection is also been a major challenge. And the last I would say, on this point is the fact that even now, energy tariffs remain really low in most countries, especially developing countries. The business case or the need for energy efficiency is still very highly compromised. So even if we do have an understanding of what data needs to be collected, till the time we are able to overcome the energy tariff related issues, and because of which the payback period for many appliances tends to be extremely long. I'm not sure how those barriers are something that as a community we can address. I think we need to find ways to quantify metrics which will respond, which will sort of overcome some of the lack of understanding on the energy tariffs and how they can change to improve the cost benefit of efficient appliances.
May I come in?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So at CLASP, we work across the world to help develop better policies for better appliances, more efficient appliances and quality appliances. And for each country and each appliance that we work in, we have to make a case. We have to provide a justification of why that particular country, why that particular appliance, why prioritize, how do you prioritize these appliances? And we have also written a guidebook, which you will probably be familiar with, on how to develop policies for appliances worldwide. And our experience has been that the emphasis on what justification is varies from place to place. So in the case of, for example, Europe, the justification leans heavily on the carbon emission reductions. Whereas when you come to Africa, the bigger justification is on consumer protection and economic development. So we do collect a lot of data in the market assessments that precede any energy efficiency policy program. And we have divided the data sets into 5 different types of data sets. One is market data, the other one is engineering data, the other one is usage data, behavioral data, and ancillary data. And as previous speakers have said, you want to quantify the cost of the equipment and subsequently the reduction in that cost by moving on to more efficient appliances. But you also want to quantify the carbon emissions associated with that equipment, and subsequently you can be able to calculate the emission reductions. What is also increasingly important now is to look at the life cycle from how the appliance is manufactured, shipped, installed, used, then disposed of or recycled, and all that data needs to be collected so that you can see which one has the biggest, or what policy intervention will give the biggest life cycle benefit, and also which policy intervention will have the biggest impact on the carbon footprint of the appliance. And then you can apply that information to make the justification based on whatever the host country or the host government is emphasizing, as I said, whether the emphasis is on life cycle cost benefit analysis, or whether it's on the carbon footprint, or if it's a combination of the same. So all that data is collected towards making that case. And CLASP has also developed databases, so you can be able to see which country has what policies and at what point are those policies, and you can see what improving a certain policy from a certain efficiency level to another, how that would impact on the environment, and also how it would impact on the life cycle benefit of that appliance. Thank you. Sorry, I haven't sorted my camera, so you're not able to see me, and I can't raise my hand, so I have to intervene by raising my voice.
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And I see Philip now, please.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. I would like to share a bit of our observations in countries we're active in. Generally, I can say that there's definitely different level in availability, data quality, and the data transparency when looking at more developed countries compared to developing countries. But still, I think that in many developing countries we are active in, just to name 2, like Ghana, for example, or the Philippines, we can see that there's a lot of effort being spent into improving data management for product, to contribute policies on product efficiency, especially in the area of air conditioners and room air conditioners and domestic refrigerators. So a lot of effort is spent on accessing data on input, ports of import, customs, and what we observe is so communication between the different receiving data or managing data is improving. Still, what we think is missing is an improved level of transparency, meaning bringing the data together, making it like centrally accessible, and letting, let's say, different actors being able to analyze data and participate in interpret, which then I would say would also improve the actual policy making and make the data legitimate for making. So, which again would can also address mechanism to close the gap between data management and the use for policies. So yeah, that transparency I think plays quite an important role here. There's a lot of data already been deploying and available, making available in a structured way, and transparency is, I think, key to.
Thanks, Philip.
Bettina, I can react a little bit, and hopefully I can generate a little bit of debate here. Yes, data is important, and we know that we are doing, all of us are doing some kind of effort in different fronts. But still, I think that there's a lot of disconnections between the different actors. I'm talking about demand, supply, financial entities, government. Just to put you an example, we are in a project in Ghana, basically trying to provide efficient cooling systems to households, refrigerators and air conditioning systems. Ghana is one of the places where have been flooded by dumping by second-hand refrigerators, mainly from the UK. They have around 2 million refrigerators that have been sent to the market. And the way that it works normally is sent by a couple of very smart people in England. That they send it by containers. They announce it in Facebook, and people goes to buy these very cheap refrigerators directly at the port when these refrigerators arrive. You have a country that they have implemented regulation on refrigerators. People is acquiring this because it's cheap. As I said before, it's cheap at the beginning, but very expensive in the long term. So it ends up to be, they invest 4 times less than an efficient labeled refrigerator that exists in Ghana, but they pay very high electricity bills for this. The providers that sell high efficient refrigerators in the country as well, they struggle to sell their equipments because people is thinking that they are buying a good second-hand product from the UK. So you can see here, how do you connect all these dots between labels, between regulation, between MEPs, between financial entities, and try to raise awareness to all these different actors that have to take a decision on the product. So yeah, I leave that as a...
So to address Daniel's question, we heard before this notion of taking ownership of the data collection process.
Yeah.
What do the rest of the speakers think about that?
Okay, let me see Charles. Let me start. Can you get me?
We don't hear you very well, Charles.
Let me see if it can improve. Is it better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me start with the data collection first. I always say that when you collect data, if you collect data and you don't use the data, they become overhead loads. They are useless. So there's no need to go and collect data every month, every year, go and impart them when you don't use them. And that means you need to analyze the data, get something from the data, and that's what we are going to get from the data analyzing the data. That's what will be meaningful for you, and that's what we are going to use. So in most cases, you may feel it, in many cases, people just keep collecting data and then they just have them. So that's useless energy you are wasting. At the acre level, we use what we call the EcoRex. In the EcoRex, is a system where we collect the data in all the member states, all the country, renewable energy data, energy efficiency data, and then we analyze those data, and then we manage those data and try to implement them, monitoring those data analysis to make them meaningful. Another challenge for the data aspect is really capacity development aspect. We need to develop capacity in the data collection, how to use the data, how to implement the data, and also this should be coupled with awareness creation. It's only then when we create enough capacity development and awareness creation that makes sense to the policy maker. I mean by the capacity development is not only the 10 core people. We need to involve the policy maker, the policy and decision maker in the process for them to really have to get an understanding of what we are doing in order for us to get their support. And this being done, we also need to create a market for the data for what we are doing. We may need to create a market value for them to be useful in order to promote and use what we are doing. And that will also encourage the policy maker. And by the market player, it means we are having way to have more people who are going to be involved in those processes, be it men or women, children, young youth. They are all part of this process, the energy efficiency process, and we should not be left alone. In that regard, ECOWAS is, for example, developing a product registration system. What we mean by product database is that based on the minimum energy efficiency standard we have developed for all the electrical appliances, lighting, refrigeration, air conditioning, all the appliances where we have a map, we are developing a database for all the countries in the sub-region to create a shield that no product should be able to come into our sub-region unless they fulfill the map we have developed for all the region, because one country alone cannot make it. You cannot secure it as one country because the product will be coming from everywhere. And that's what we are doing currently now, when we are collecting the data, be it in the industry, the building, and also as the program we are having on electric energy efficiency, electric vehicle, that the meaning we are giving to those data collection. Another obstacle to things is the funding of the energy efficiency program, the mechanism of funding energy program, which has been overshadowed by the implementation of renewable energy technology. And I always say, before you go to renewable energy, you better clean your house before, and that will do your energy efficiency before you start to build power plant. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you for the description. I think you brought the policymaker to the center of the discussion. I see Kevin wants to comment.
So I guess that's almost going towards governance regimes and saying, yeah, one of the solutions really, I think, registration databases for energy using equipment are one of the ways that we'll actually get better data on what's on the market and certainly benchmarking efficiency around the world. Going back to your data gaps on benchmarking of products, I guess one of the key things is registration systems will help, but different countries are using different efficiency metrics. So I think harmonizing our efficiency metrics is a good way so we can better benchmark efficiency. I think we started to do that with motors already. We know that fairly well. Refrigerators and air conditioners are getting there, but other products still need better harmonization so that you know what's being sold in one country is comparable to another one in another country. In parallel to that, we'll also look at still the price versus efficiency as well, and I think we need better data on understanding what that really means. If you look at the price of a product on the market at the moment and introduce regulations, the price afterwards rarely is an increase, which is what's usually expected. So I think we need better ex-post evaluations to understand what's really happening with prices. So that's an important aspect. I'll let others take the floor on these data gaps.
Please, Alvin, and then Sumedia.
Yeah, thanks, Bettina. I think first I kind of realize now that after some of our initial points is that in terms of at least from data and collection and the way energy efficiency is kind of at least in the product side, is kind of lagging behind, is that there's a lot happening at various levels, at least in terms of how. So I hear that there's data collection happening on different kind of products, different kind of side of the angles that we enter into it, but there's no real kind of coordination among the various players to kind of share that, and maybe some sort of a policeman to kind of make sure all of it is kind of synergized in a way. So I guess that is certainly which is lacking. But what I would say is, at least when it comes down to the point of benchmarking, in my experience of being involved in benchmarking exercises when I was with the Government of India and later on in Asia Pacific regions, is that a lot of the benchmarking exercises are basically done based on the energy efficiency benchmarking experience from the manufacturing countries, and policymakers are in for a rude shock when they set up EE standards and updates are not happening. They're not getting the same kind of interest from the market, or at least the buyers. And this is where I completely back what Kevin just mentioned, is that the price versus energy efficiency data is something that we're really lacking at. And unless we really have a clear angle on that, it is going to be directly impacting the point which even Daniel mentioned, which is you might have very good market monitoring mechanisms, compliance checking, but you know what? If it's too expensive, then you're going to be leading into perverse incentives where there will be a dumping of inefficient products. So I guess the data, in terms of helping make policymakers their decisions, in terms of what kind of strategy that they need to use, right from project or program implementation, and even monitoring, and even financing of such stuff. So I guess there's a lot to be done in terms of how to really categorize it and kind of share it across all the various players to really see national level impact. Because that's where it's really lacking, because you see that at the global level we can do a lot of things, but it's really there's a lot of imbalance when it comes to national levels, and frankly speaking, it's all a lot of it is trade related as well. So I guess with that, I think maybe Sumedha, I think you can kind of take my point from there.
Sumedha, please.
Thanks, Bettina. Thanks, Alvin. I kind of, completely echo the thoughts that Alvin has shared. And if we just look at, the market that we have mentioned so many times, we're actually only talking about the rich and the middle income class, which actually uses most of the products and appliances, and they are the real beneficiaries of efficiency, if at all there is any. And to sort of go back to the point that Daniel made, and even Charles also alluded to, this whole inclusion angle in data collection, especially from the point of view of how the urban poor or the low-income populations use appliances. What are the consumption patterns like? They do not typically use appliances the way we do. And we assume that the policies that are being designed at the national level, they will trickle down to their level, but we understand that those gaps still remain. So I think what is significantly needed is to have, dedicated data collection for both segments of the population. You have the higher income and the middle income category, and you have the low income and the urban poor, which use appliances very differently. And some sort of a policy convergence has to happen where you have different types of policies addressing the different challenges that both these segments of the population face. And it also sort of goes back to the point Charles had made about how the funding and how we sort of finance these also impacts the data collection. So most of the data collection that is happening in India, for example, on check testing of refrigerators and air conditioners on the ground, whether it's for monitoring and verification purposes, this does not really typically enter into the secondary market or the second-hand market. So that market completely is out of the purview of the policymaker right now. So what can we do to make sure that inclusion is also built into the data collection process is something which I would want to highlight.
We're left with 5 minutes, and I think we spelled out very well what the issue is, what the data gaps, and how we can solve it. Perhaps what I would like to bring back to the main session is an example of a country or institution that is doing things right, to bring an idea what success can look like. Daniel, if you want to go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure if it will be an example of success, but at least it's something that can be taken as an example and can address some of the issues that have been mentioned by Kevin and Sumita about, especially about financing. We work a lot with banks, and just to define what is green and what is not green, what is efficient, what is not, where do you draw the line is quite challenging, especially if you are working in an emerging and developing countries. And one of the efforts that is being now pushed very hard is by the European Union with this financing and sustainable taxonomy thing that is trying to bring some benchmarks on exactly defining what is green, what is efficient, what is taken as renewable energy. And this is a global effort that as well he's been trying to push to be implemented in emerging and developing countries, which I see that a very big step. I don't see that happening yet, even when there's a lot of discussion about that. But I'm part of a group that is discussing, at least in Europe, how the financial sector can implement this, and already has been some discussions that the financial institutions have to take this taxonomy as a benchmark to finance energy efficiency.
Just a very quick response in terms of this international benchmarking. So I think there are some initiatives around the world trying to see what these levels should be for more efficiency. So there's a COP26 initiative by the UK government that's trying to map out what these figures are. But there are also some practical implementations like the EBRD's Energy Technology Selector, where you can actually identify what are the most efficient products. So I think there are some of these benchmarking studies around the world, or models around the world, that could be used better or used more.
Alvin?
Yeah, I think I'll just use a minute to give a shout out to all the good work done by IEA. GIZ's portal of the Green Cooling Initiative is an excellent resource as well for anybody looking at cooling products related stuff. I'll just put a plug in for SEforALL's access related data as well. There's CLASS, which is done pretty good job and has been in this field for pretty bunch of years. WRI is also doing a lot of economic analysis, financial analysis. So I think maybe as a takeaway, it could be that we have to work more closely with each other. That's what I see, that we have a lot of stuff that we need to kind of synergize it more across.
I think that's an excellent proposition. That all organizations, we need to continue contributing in supporting our member states and governments that we give technical assistance to ensure that they can address the data gaps and collect evidence. With that, I wonder if any of you want to give any concluding remarks before they send us back to the plenary room. Anyone? I think that Daniel is sharing a report with us. Well, then let me thank you very much, all of you, for the lively discussion. It's been easy to moderate your conversation. And I have a few keywords that I would like to bring back to the plenary, and I want to make sure that it reflects what you have said. You spoke about consistency, accessibility of data, taking ownership, the need of harmonization, ensuring inclusion and segmented population, harmonizing, and ensuring that taxonomy is correct so we can finance these type of interventions. Am I missing anyone or anything you said? Well, happy. Thanks. Great. So again, I'll bring you back to the picture of the Ritter cell. Imagine we have spent the last 45 minutes dancing to the Blue Danube or other traditional Strauss waltzes. I'm sure Albin will be looking forward to that after the quarantine, getting to know Vienna better. And again, I hope to see you all, God willing, in July 2021. And I suggest that we all need to go back. On the left-hand side, we have the sessions. I will meet all of you at the Festsaal where our plenary takes place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bettina.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
So welcome back. I hope you had some good discussions.
Thanks,
very difficult task you have given us. Very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian, for a really difficult task to try to solve the world's sustainable energy problem in about 35, 40 minutes. Extremely difficult, but very interesting and very succinct. Thank you very much.
Okay, but I'm sure you managed, no, Paul? So we're looking forward to your summary.
I can only, yeah.
No, certainly. Yeah, I know time is a bit short, but yeah, it's for us to get started, and you know, it's a virtual manner of organizing this. Well, may I invite you to come back with a summary of your sessions? And here you have another challenge. You only have 3 minutes. Please, Karin, may I give you the floor?
Yes, thank you very much, Peter, and thank you so much to the panelists that have shared my session. It was really very exciting discussions. We could have continued for hours. So we were discussing the global perspectives, basically, with 3 questions on how are we on track with achieving the energy efficiency targets of the SDG 7, and what needs to be done, what are the barriers and what needs to be done to achieve a market transformation. We had very interesting perspectives from the European Union, from the Caribbean's experience of colleagues working in the African context. And I think the common sense is, no, we are not on track. We are far away from being on track. But this is not only what the figures show, but also what the realities on the ground are showing. But it's not hopeless. What we have identified are a series of very, very significant opportunities, also in these times of the COVID crisis and in view of the economic recovery. So what I would like to highlight from our discussion is that it is very, very crucial that we connect interventions that are designed by governments or by institutions, by international donor community, that we connect them to people. People and markets are not interested in products. They are interested in the service. They are interested in how they get access to cooling, how they get access to lighting. So when it comes to achieve a market transformation and to stimulate getting the private sector in the driving seat, it is also very important that we look at an energy service business approach in many of these markets. Obviously, we've identified the least developed countries, the African region, but also the small island developing countries as very crucial emerging markets. And another aspect, and with this I will also close, is that when we are looking into these markets, we should not only look into what type of products do we think we want to promote, but rather looking at these are emerging markets and the economies of these countries are going to grow significantly. And together with this, there will be a demand for services. So we have to be very conscious that this demand for these services might lead us to a very different, or a necessity to a very different thinking of what type of products are needed, what type of services are needed to achieve this market transformation. This is in very, very short, a very rich discussion that we had, and thank you very much, Peter.
Excellent, Karin, thanks a lot. Let's just move on quickly to Brian. Very good summary, thanks, Karin.
Yeah, great. So you know, from the country's perspective, we talked a lot about the awareness of energy efficiency and what it would take to get to a market transformation, basically. And you know, one of the things that really stuck out to me was awareness should never be underestimated. But that with a youth angle, you know, we're seeing a ability to shift awareness over time. And there's a great program that's just starting up in Ghana where they're actually going to bring energy efficiency into the curriculum all the way from early education throughout their education, their childhood. That is showing that there will be a shift, and you know, it's a great example of a program that should probably be brought to many countries. Of course, that government is key to all of this, and the countries that have been working on energy efficiency and delivering programs for a long time, they're actually seeing much better awareness of energy efficiency and awareness of the benefit of these products. Some, of course, are just starting, and particularly the off-grid situations, that's very much at the start point or not even starting in some cases. But the governments need to create this enabling environment. They need to, the government needs to be the driving force, but having strategic partnership to really focus on delivering those benefits, the benefit to the grid, health, education, and beyond. And then the third one was, you know, really about the actual mechanisms for awareness, and standards and labels, of course, are a really important policy that governments have, industry takes part in, and you know, recognizing that you need to continue to monitor and revise and improve these types of policies as you go forward. So those were the items that came to me from these great country lessons. So thanks to everybody in that session.
Wonderful, thank you. So Brian, just to understand your last point, so what you're saying is that policy need to be constantly monitored. That
Monitored and revised. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. It's not just the paperwork, no. Thank you. Bettina, may I give the floor to you and then to Paul? Thanks. Bettina?
Thank you very much, Petra. Sorry, just working with two screens is difficult. So let me attempt to summarize the session on data and evidence. So the objective of this breakout panel was to show how data and documented evidence contribute to achieving goals and supporting policymakers and consumers alike in their decision making. We need data to understand how to design appropriate interventions at the market level. We need data to help the consumer make decisions when purchasing appliance. But we need to bear in mind that many consumers do not even have a choice nor the information to select a better or a higher energy efficiency product. We need the data to enable the monitoring, reporting, verification, and enforcement of MEPS. The speakers in my group identified that the data sets required at the global and the national level and also at the market level, and that there are many gaps. The gaps include the consistency across country and regions, the accessibility to all users, taking ownership on the data collection, and ensuring inclusion of different societal groups. For example, the appliances that are used by the urban poor need to be reflected. And we finally discussed some solutions to the issue of to the gaps mentioned. There's need for better categorizing and sharing data. There is need for harmonization on the data collection systems. And finally, there is need for financing the process to ensure that the data collection actually happens. And to do so, we need to make sure that the financing has the right taxonomy. We need to determine when something is sustainable or green to make sure that the banking sector understands the importance of providing support to these initiatives. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bettina, to highlight this importance about data collection and also harmonizing it and bringing it forward to the financial institution and making them understand what's green and what's requested. Thank you very much. Paul, may I give the floor to you?
Certainly. Thank you very much, Petra. Just to say that we had a challenge in terms of the enablers for progress based on the experience of the different organizations, and lots of interesting input in terms of challenges, missing programs. There's a race to the bottom in terms of affordability, where quality of product is not considered. Lack of capacity in countries, of course, but that's a serious issue. Lack of technical assistance, market development not what it should be, countries not considering life cycle assessment, missing carbon tax, missing regulation, lots of challenges that we're familiar with. For me, financing was a debated point in terms of whether it was actually a challenge or not, and disagreement around that in terms of if the right framework is in place, then financing will follow, which was very interesting in terms of support for regulatory frameworks and minimum energy performance standards in particular, regional approach, regional harmonization being a key enabler to allow countries that don't have, for example, testing facilities for products to share those. Also the need for diversity in terms of the approach to go down to the city level, not just take national level approach, and to have an integrated approach across the country, which involves both the national approach and the city's approach. The front-running countries in particular regions as well, it's a recommendation that they be strongly supported because they can really show what works in a particular region. Technology is available, and it's up to twice as efficient as in many of the countries that we work with, developing emerging economies using inefficient technology still. We need to scale. We have big opportunity, but we need to create a pipeline. And I think the pipeline and bankability is a big issue, but the projects will follow if we create the right framework. And we need to create a financing fund to support programs. And this includes energy access programs, so strategic, long-term programs, not just the short-term thinking, support NDCs, empower the cities where there is very good leadership in many cases, and the need for an integrated policy approach coming across, access to finance being a big issue. Perhaps cities can help to unlock the access to finance issue for it.
Thank you very much.
Quick summary.
Oh, a lot of items. You're giving me a difficult task to summarize all the excellent inputs. No, thanks a lot. Let me just summarize. We have a few minutes to summarize. So from Karin, we have heard that there is a shift from a product to service. So we can't differentiate anymore having just a product, but it has to be seen in the framework of what does this product deliver, what service. So move away from product to service. Would be seen as an important opportunity, and connect the people and markets to this. From Brian, we have heard that awareness is a key point and should not be underestimated. I think your point on the program in Ghana is very well taken, that we should never take this for granted. So education, coming in with energy efficiency programs at schools is a very good example on how we drive this forward. Of course, it's up to the government to drive this. So a proactive role I can see in both of your intervention of the government is required. We can't leave the market to itself. From Bettina, we have heard about the importance of data and information, not just gathering, but also of harmonizing the data collection. And then also, if we have this harmonized system, that might also be an opportunity to have a better access to financing and to find a better understanding from the financing partners to come in with products and support mechanisms. Please come in if I forgot something or if I'm not. Then Paul has talked a lot about financing, and what I take from you is that if the policy framework is in place, finance will follow. And I think you also applied the same. If good portfolio record is in place, then also the finance will follow. In doing so, we should move away from just a national focus, but also see the growing importance of regional and in specific city level interventions, and also working with the front runners in those cities, in those regions, to spread technologies. Technologies are there, but they have to be applied, they have to spread it forward. So again, also a role for the government to play to counteract this missing know-how, the missing regulations, and the lack of technical assistance. I hope I could summarize your interventions. I would very much, there are no questions for the time being, just really agreements with what you said. So I think you have all done a wonderful job. Thank you so much for your time. We will certainly take your information forward. This is the first part of our product series, and hopefully we see you at the VEF, either in virtual manner or in person. We don't know yet. So thank you very much for your time, and yeah, see you soon. Thank you.